So the first race this morning will be the Group 1B. Once again, those are the 1947 to 1955 sports racing and GT cars. The next race we'll have after that one is Group 2B. That's the 1955 to 1964 GTs. And, of course, the cars you'll recognize there are the Porsche 356s, the 356 Speedster, and all those type cars, Alfa Romeos, Porsche Abarth, all that. Then we've got that Formula Ford race we were talking about. That's going to be Group 3B. Those are the 1967 to 1981 Formula Fords. Our Group 4B this morning will be the 1961 to 1966 G cars, but those are cars under 2,500 cc's.
And Group 5B, 2-liter sports racers through 1984. Group 6B, 1981 to 1991 IMSA GTO and GTU cars. This was a very competitive series in its day and some excellent racing. We can look forward to seeing some great cars out there in that group as well. And wrapping up the morning will be Group 7B, 1983 to 2016 Masters Endurance Legends.
Actually, Group 7B will be going this afternoon, so we're going to have another Group 4A from yesterday that will be going out. All right, cars are heading on the track. Let's run through our starting grid for our very first race of the day. This is Group 1B, the 1947 to 1955 sports racing and GT cars. On the pole is Rob Manson out of Carmel Valley in a 1953 Tatum GMC Special.
Gary Cox alongside Newport Beach, 1953 Austin Healey Chevy Special. John Buddenbaum out of Sunnyvale, 1949 Jaguar Parkinson Special, and John Bowe in an Allard J2X.
Marcus Bicknell out of the UK is in a 1952 Streets Manning Special. Steve Schuler is in a 1955 Chrysler Hageman Special. That word special keeps coming up.
Jay Embry, Granite Bay, California, 54 Lotus 6. Scott Shelley from Santa Monica, 53 Curtis 500S Dodge.
Another Curtis is being driven by Tom Claridge, and Paul Freestone has a 1948 Holden. John Mote Sr. is in a 1950 Allard K2.
Rainier Becker from London, 55 Porsche Spyder. Hans Kleissel from Poling, Germany, 1955 Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing.
Gregor Magnuson is in a 1954 Porsche 356 Coupe, and Jeffrey Abramson is in a 1950 MGTD.
Tom Tribune, Nashville, Tennessee, 56 Denzel 1500 International Sport. Guido Harmon, Poling, Germany, 55 Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing.
Another Gullwing is being driven by Alex Curtis out of Scottsdale, Arizona. And from Laguna Beach, California, it's Bill Rookledge in a 1952 Jaguar XK120.
Leland Osborne from San Miguel, 55 Shannon and Crossley Roadster Special. John LeCarner, Placentia, California, 51 Allard K2.
Lars Mapstead from Naples, California, is in a 1952 Jaguar XK120. And there's another 1952 Jaguar XK120 beside it from Reno, Nevada. It's James Alder.
Kaid Maru from La Jolla, 51 MGTD. Next up, a 1955 Mercedes-Benz 190 SL, Costa Mesa, California, Steve Marks.
Timothy Barnes coming from just down the coast in San Luis Obispo in a 1951 Jaguar XK120. Well, Michael Cleary out of Carpinteria has a 1955 Cleary Special Crossley Devon.
Bernard DeVue from Palm Desert, 50 Allard J2, 55 Mercedes-Benz 190 SL. Jeff Marks, Costa Mesa.
David Nelson out of Gyersville, California is in a 1955 Triumph TR2, and David Baldacci out of Reading is in a 1954 Nardi Spyder.
Jack Perkins, San Jose, driving a 1954 Warrior Bristol, a 1952 Sayata Diana from Sunnyvale, Robert Williams.
Gregory Whitten out of Medina, Washington, a 1953 Lancia D24 Sport. Jim Smith, Woodside, California, has a 1955 RAE Type A.
Jim Weissenborg, Corral de Tierra, California, 59 Byers CR90 MG Special. Doug Sallin, Monterey, 1952 Morgan +4.
And our final two competitors, Bernard Juckley out of Sierra Madre, California, 1955 Jaguar, and Vince Vento from Miami, Florida, in a 1953 Curtis 500S. Cars are out on the track right now on their formation lap as they'll be going around the track, just coming down through the corkscrew right now. And as we mentioned yesterday, you know, Laguna Seca opened in 1957. And it's very possible that these are the kind of cars that were in some of those early races, those early sports roadsters from 1947 through 1955.
Absolutely. Laguna Seca actually came about because of a fatality at the Pebble Beach road races, which preceded Laguna Seca. it was the course through Pebble Beach, through the forest over in Del Monte, was deemed to be too dangerous to continue to race on. So a bunch of entrepreneurs got together, talked to the Army, got this property, and built this racetrack in a very short period of time. And it's been here since 1957.
I remember being here in the early days, back in the early days for me, back in the mid-'70s, when you'd sit there and look one way and you'd see the race cars on track, and you look another way and you'd see tanks rumbling off into the distance. You got the greatest machinery from both sides. All right, they're coming around the final turn, heading into the front straightaway, and we're just about to get our first green flag of the day as we go racing here at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. And there we have it, the green flag, and Rob Manson in that 1953 Tatum GMC Special is off to the races.
Looks like it's the Austin Healey Chevy Special of Gary Cox. He's got to tuck in behind him. The Parkinson Jag comes up the inside out of the second row, pulls alongside that Healey. Somebody went around on the outside. I didn't get the number on that. We'll pick it up as they come through. Think you may have a new second place car.
Yeah, they come through cleanly. I love the look of that Tatum GMC Special, that number 25, but he is absolutely being challenged by John Bowe in a 1952 Allard J2X.
Yeah, that's the Allard that made the pass around the outside, went around everybody when they weren't looking, and went from fourth to second just as they exited turn one, the Andretti hairpin.
Yeah, it did a great job of kind of sizing everything up, realizing that as everybody got clogged up on the inside of the turn, he went through on the outside of the turn and made a nice clean move. The question is, as he accelerates up the hill, does he have anything for that 1953 Tatum GMC?
He's got a big motor, 5.4 liters. That's a larger engine, and it's a V8. That Chevy Tatum Special is a straight 6-cylinder.
Cars begin to spread out just a little bit as they work their way up the hill, and all kinds of great machinery as we talked about. Everything from those homemade specials to a Lotus Mark 6. I particularly love the fact that they've got those Mercedes gull wings that are out there racing, which is really what the original gull wing was intended to do. All right, coming down through the corkscrew, everybody getting their wheels underneath them, getting used to the feel of exactly what it's like to be racing here at Laguna Seca.
That's an interesting matchup there with John Buddenbaum in that 49 Jaguar Parkinson Special, battling with Marcus Bicknell in that 52 Streets Manning Special.
We've got one of the cars already having to go off and go into the pits. Everybody else now negotiating their way around the very last lap. You see that number 666 car. That's a 1954 Lotus Mark 6 in the alloy look, shall we say, as it comes across and takes the stripe for the second lap.
Well, Manson led the first lap. He was followed by John Bowe in that Allard, who made a great move from the second row to go up into that second spot by the time they got in the first corner. Car 17 now parked on the side of the course.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Not able to finish his first lap. That's Jack Perkins out of San Jose in a 1954 Warrior Bristol. But that's back up front. Rob Manson leading the way in that 1953 Tatum Special. You know, car was originally built and driven by Chuck Tatum out of Stockton, California. It has a 302 cubic inch Wayne Engineering GMC inline 6-cylinder motor. And we've got a full course caution because of that car that's stuck at the top of the hill. So we've got safety vehicles on the track. So we've got a full course caution to slow things down just a little bit. And it'll be interesting now to see what John Bowe can do. Remember in that very first turn, he had the ability to accelerate up the outside in that Allard and take all the way from fifth all the way up to second position. So let's see what he can do on this next restart when they come around.
Yeah, that yellow flag's for the Warrior Bristol. It's parked up on the hill, unable to make it completely around on the first lap, mechanical difficulty. So with the yellow flag situation, it's kind of lead and follow. You are not allowed to improve your position or pass another car under a full course yellow. The emergency crews are up there getting ready to hook up that Warrior Bristol. What they might do is just pull them to the top of the hill and turn them loose. Now they've got the hood up on the car. They're looking underneath, possibly broken throttle linkage. Who knows? Could be any of a myriad of problems that caused them to pull over and park. In the meantime, the cars continue to circulate pretty much single file in order from where they were when the yellow flag came out. And they're not going to change until the yellow flag is pulled in. I haven't seen the pace car. They might send the pace car out in front of the leader, Rob Manson, in that Tatum Special.
And it's great looking at these cars, once again built between 1947 and 1955, to look at the different ways that everybody was approaching the concept of aerodynamics, because these are about as different each one as you can ask for. You know, you look at that Tatum Special right off the top, and it's very open in the front with those fenders that kind of flare up, but you see all the wheel and everything underneath. And then, of course, right behind it is that red Allard with the body work, but kind of a lumpy body work, shall we say. And then there's the Austin Healey C behind it, the Jaguar Parkinson behind it. Once again, these are cars that are specially built for racing in their day. It doesn't look a lot like an Austin Healey, doesn't look like an awful lot like a Jaguar, but once again, these were specials, one-offs, often built specifically for racing.
That Tatum definitely has home built stamped all over the body. Looking at the bodywork on that car, got a pretty ferocious looking front end. Those fenders open up pretty high over the front end, and oval shaped grille with a pair of headlights nestled in it. Got a ferocious look when it's coming at you. Looks like it's ready to gobble you up, and that's pretty much what he has done to this point. He is ahead of everyone, but when they do get the restart, we'll have to keep our eyes on John Bowe in that number 11 red 52 Allard J2X. But in the meantime, it's all Rob Manson in that 25 Tatum GMC Special. Pace car leading the field around.
Yeah, that body on the Tatum Special is all aluminum. It was built by a gentleman by the name of Jack Hageman out of Hayward, California. The very first road race they had for this car was at Golden Gate Park back in 1953. And it was a pretty regular competitor in California from 1953 to 1955, including the Pebble Beach Road Racers, which you were just talking about just a little while ago. The car won the Best Sports Car Trophy at the 1954 Oakland Roadster Show. It was even featured in a film, believe it or not. It was called Johnny Dark, starring Tony Curtis. It's been vintage race since 1990, and it just looks just the way it was when it was presented back then.
Look at it, Gary Cox's car. It does not look like an Austin Healey anywhere forward of the rear wheels, but the back end obviously looks like an Austin Healey, but everything forward of that is custom made and built around that Chevy V8 that's in the car. That number 13 Button Bomb Special, the Jaguar Parkinson Special. That's quite the car, too. That was one, I think, that was built from a wreck at Pebble Beach. Jag hit a tree, salvaged it, and they put that car together, and it was very competitive in its day. That's a 1949 vintage car.
Yeah, it was built in 1951 at International Motors LA for the gentleman by the name of Don Parkinson. The body was actually sketched out by someone you may have heard of these days, Robert Cumberford. If you've ever seen any of his artwork in Automobile Magazine, he was a teenager when he came up with the design for that 1949 Jaguar Parkinson Special, that number 13 car. So it's amazing to think that as a teenager, he was able to create that look.
They continue to circulate under the yellow flag. I think it's going to be pulled pretty quickly. We'll have to watch for the pace car to come in. The signal that the caution period is going to end will be lights out on the pace car. Right now they are blinking as the pace car leads the field through the infield.
And once again, as we look back, look at the different styles as each car comes through the lens and the camera, what it sees. I mean, everything from, you know, those low slung things to look, we've got a sedan, but more importantly, look at that Mercedes 300 SL, which is at the back of the screen coming around the turns. I mean, to have 300 SLs, original 300 SLs, are ridiculously valuable. And to have them here in a racing form, and we have 3 of them that are racing, are truly amazing to think that they're out here, as valuable as they are, and more importantly, they're being used. Because you got to remember, the original Mercedes 300 SL was a race car.
Those 2 Curtises out there, too, they're quite the car. Curtis built cars for the street. He also built cars for Indianapolis.
Now, in addition to those 2 Mercedes, there's 3 Mercedes 300 SLs. There's also a couple of Mercedes 190 SLs, which look very much like a roadster version of the 300. But in their day, they really weren't raced very much. Whereas this car, this 300 SL, was designed as a race car from the word go. It was the SL, of course, standing for Sport Light, which means sport light in German. And as a result, these cars were designed to race. They were racing from the word go, and then became very successful cars in the salon, on the showroom floor. But the Mercedes 190, well, that was a car designed to take advantage of the looks of the 300 SL. But it never had the racing pedigree that the 300 SL did, mainly because it didn't have the same performance. It was really built on a sedan chassis and just didn't have the chops that the 300 SL had from the word go. But today, well, I tell you what, it's got a great look, and when it's out there, it looks fast, even though it may not be.
Another interesting car out there is 25, Paul Freestone's 1948 Holden from down under. He's from Tullamarine, New South Wales. Looks like we've got the green flag, and we are back at it again. We'll pick up the leaders and see how that battle is shaping up between Manson and John Bowe.
So as they go racing again, Rob Manson in that 25C passing a back marker, so that's not a car that he has to contend with. For whatever reason, probably came into the pits, now ended up at the front of the field, and his job is to get out of the way of everybody. I was curious if Bowe would have anything on the restart, but he didn't. As a result, he is chasing Rob Manson as they go up the hill.
Yeah, he is right in his wheel tracks as they head up into turn 6. They'll be up to the top of the hill and start their descent down the corkscrew and back into our view. Bowe took a much tighter, narrower line there. Manson driving, used all of the road. He's going to do that when he starts down the corkscrew as well. Down they come, but Bowe's close right up behind him now as they come through the corkscrew and back into the view of the spectators down here at start and finish.
And Manson doing a great job working his tires. You could see him sliding just a little bit as he came down through the corkscrew. Bowe took a slightly tighter line going through the corkscrew, and at first that allowed him to close right up on the tail of Manson. However, once they started to go down the line, and I think Manson in that Tatum special was able to ease it out just a little bit going onto this front straightaway, he's still got the lead. Bowe hangs the tail out very slightly as they come around turn 11 and go back up underneath the flag stand. But going into the drag race down into turn 1, well, it's very easily that Tatum GMC special.
Yeah, Manson's car seems to handle just a little bit better than that Allard. I think they're pretty much equal on power. Boy, you can see them both sawing at the wheel as they work through that double apex corner down there, the Andretti hairpin 1 and then 2. But so far, it looks like Rob Manson has the measure of that Allard.
Boy, look at the field as it comes around and behind them as they're exiting that final turn and then going onto the front straightaway. We've got MGs, we've got Porsches, we've got Mercedes, classic names in racing, all out on the front stretch, all right now diving into turn number 1, the Andretti hairpin.
Yeah, one of the Porsches about to eat up an MG. I believe that's Jeffrey Abramson's 50 MG TD. You can see that's been modified from racing. A lot of the body work has changed a little bit on that car. It's a pretty fast MG. And he's given fits to a Mercedes 300 SL. So there's some good battles between cars that you would not expect to be competing against one another.
And look at those large steering wheels and the way that, remember, you don't have power steering here, although you're moving pretty quickly, but the ability to move that large steering wheel, gives them the ability to control it, kind of sliding right through there. And once again, we've got the Porsche right behind it. That's car number 60. That's the car being driven by Gregor Magnussen, Porsche 356.
Yeah, that's a good 3-car battle between 11 and 60. And that Mercedes-Benz 300 SL. That's the 0-0 car of Guido Harmon.
Yeah, this is really the battle that we're looking at right here, is the battle back for, I think from 14th, 15th, and 16th in terms of what we're at on the field. Going into the Andretti hairpin right now. Whoa, we've got the Allard trying to take a look to the inside of that Tatum GMC special, but he wasn't able to get in there. The Tatum closes the door, and as a result, he's still stuck behind him because they go into the next lap.
Oh, and the Tatum, driven by Manson, locks up a wheel under heavy braking. They're coming up onto some traffic. Bowe sees blood in the water. He tries to get inside of Manson as they go through turn 4. Now they can head over into the infield area. There's a bit of traffic in front of them. I think that's Don Baldacci and Nardi Crosley. But here comes Manson, and Bowe is right stuck to his tail as they head up the hill. Manson seems to be a little stronger going up the hill, but by the time they get to the corkscrew and begin their descent, Bo is right on the back of his car once again.
Yeah, when it comes to pure horsepower, I have a feeling that Tatum GMC Special just has a little bit of an advantage. We see it going up the hill, we see it on the front straightaway, and then once again we'll likely see the Allard as they go through the corkscrew, because he takes a tighter line going down through, and he's able to close right up on him, but he's not able to take advantage of it.
Well, you can see them both sliding those cars through the corkscrew. I think that Tatum has a little more torque and is a quicker accelerator coming off a slow corner, and that works to Manson's advantage. He's got that inline 6-cylinder GMC engine in that car. It's probably a Cadillac in the Allard of Bo. It is a 5.4 liter engine, big V8.
Yeah, the Allard Motor Company really started producing cars after World War II. And I would say their greatest success probably was in the early 50s. You know, the J2X. This was built between 1951 and 1954. With Sidney Allard building about just over 80 of those, including the 5 full-body cars. They raced at Le Mans. Going into the Andretti hairpin, the Allard trying to move to the outside, trying the same move that he was able to use at the very beginning of the race, but this time not able to pull it off. He got stuck on the outside. Now he's going to try to move to the inside as they go through the next set of turns. But once again, the horsepower of the Manson Allard, or Manson Tatum GMC Special, just a little too much for that Allard behind.
That Allard driver is relentless. He is just harassing Manson, and Manson holding up under the pressure, has not folded, has not made a mistake. We did see one brake lock up on the car in the infield a couple of laps ago, but these two guys are really hard at it. And it's nice that both cars are open because you can watch them work the wheel. They're fighting that steering constantly. These are heavy cars and not easy to drive. They've got some more traffic they're going to get to going up the hill. Looks like he gets out of the way, out of the driver's line, and waves them by on the inside. They get to the top of the hill now and start down through the corkscrew one more time.
Looking back through the field, everybody having a pretty reasonable day out here, as once again, these are the 1947, 1955 sports racing cars that are on the track right now. That 138, that's out of San Luis Obispo, the 1954 Jaguar XK120. And of course, the number 33 car just ahead of it is a 1952 XK120 OTS. So a couple of Jaguars, and there's that Mercedes 190 we saw. And this was the battle. We're checking back in with these guys. These guys have been going at it, trying to figure out for a while, the MG was in the thick of these guys, but now it looks like these guys have kind of spread things out with number 60 Gregor Magnussen in that 1954 Porsche 356. And then we've got Guido Harmon in a Mercedes-Benz 300 SL and Alex Curtis in the Mercedes-Benz 300 SL as well.
Yeah, Magnussen has split those two 300 SL, so you've got 3 silver cars in a row, a 300 SL, a Porsche, and then another 300 SL. But the MG trying to work his way around Curtis in that 300 SL 91. So keep your eye on Jeffrey Abramson in car number 11. Magnussen got around him in the Porsche, but Abramson trying to harass it. He did get around that 300 SL, and now he's back on the number 60 car of Gregor Magnussen. They're just now coming down into turn 11. Looks like one car is going to pit.
You've got the problem with the Porsche. He's got his arm up, and he's going to go ahead and come into the pit lane. That means it leaves those 2 Mercedes 300 SLs as a sandwich with the MG in the middle. And you saw the 300 SL hanging that tail out as they went by, as they were coming onto the front straightaway.
Yeah, that second 300 SL is going to try and pass Abramson in the MG when they get down into turn 1. Not sure if he can pull it off. Yes, he did. He did make the pass. Let's set the field for you. Manson leading in the car 25, followed by Bo, the Allard, car number 11. Then it's Cox in the Austin Healey Special, 41 third. Budenbaum fourth in the 13 Jag Parkinson Special. Shelley in car number 9, the Curtis 500S, is fifth. Bicknell in the Streets Manning Special, 15-6. Jay Embry in 666. That 54 Lotus Mark 6 is 7th. Tom Claridge in his Curtis 8th, car 88. Hans Kleisel in the 55 Mercedes-Benz 300 SL 9th. And Paul Freestone in car 25. That Holden is listed as 10th.
A lot of great battles all over the track. This is another one of the ones right here. This is the battle for second between Gary Cox and John Buddenbaum. And apparently it looks like the Allard has now slipped behind these guys. So apparently he's had an issue. As a result, Rob Manson has an easy lead. There you see Rob Manson going through the picture right now in the battle for second between Gary Cox and this 1953 Austin Healey Chevy. Remember, it's got a Chevy engine in there. And then John Buddenbaum in a 1949 Jaguar Parkinson. And while we say Jaguar, it's built up. It's one of the specials from the 1950s.
That's almost the way they qualified now with Manson and Gary Cox and Buddenbaum and then John Bowe. They're running in qualifying order. Bowe got a great jump at the start we talked about, going down into turn one past two cars, moved himself from fourth to second, and was all over the back of that Tatum for most of this race. And evidently had a miscue of sorts and has dropped back to fourth spot.
But he's gaining on the leader. That look as they go up the hill.
That's Cox.
You've got the Gary Cox in the 1940, in the 41. Oh, and you've got Tatum, the leader, locks up the brakes going into the corkscrew, and as a result goes off into the gravel, and that is going to hand the lead to Gary Cox and that Austin Healey Chevy Special. And right behind him is John Buddenbaum and that 1949 Jaguar Parkinson Special. Now this is for the lead of the race. And you have to think that Manson has to be just so mad at himself, having watched that lead that he'd worked so hard on throughout the entire race just go away as he locked it up. And we had seen him lock up going into the corkscrew before that.
Same spot, except he did it big time. That time he carried too much speed up the top of the hill.
And we're getting a checkered flag, and that is the end of the race. And Gary Cox in a 1953 Austin Healey Chevy Special is going to inherit the lead on the last lap in the corkscrew when Rob Manson in that 1953 Tatum GMC Special locked it up going into it. John Buddenbaum in the 1949 Jaguar Parkinson Special ends up finishing second. So a big change in those last two laps with a set of problems between John Bowe with the Allard dropping out of second place, and then suddenly Gary Cox walking away with the win that I don't think he anticipated about midway through this race.
No, and Buddenbaum was challenging at the end. Another lap, I think Buddenbaum would have gotten around him and taken the lead, but you got to wonder what's going through John Bowe's head in that Allard. He was second for so long, shadowing Tatum, or Manson rather, in the Tatum, and now if he had kept that second spot, he would have won the race, because Tatum drove it off the track under pressure at the top of the hill.
It was just fun watching as they were going across the finish line. Rainer Becker and his Porsche Spider looked like he was had his arms out like he was almost swimming across the finish line. And that upright car, the sedan, that was that 1948 Holden. But look at the lines of these cars as they're going across. It looks like the MG was finally able to get the better of those two Mercedes 300 SLs. Hard to believe a 1952 MGTD could pull that off, but that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, that's Jeffrey Abramson, and he ended up 13th overall.
All right, take a look at the highlights of this race. Going into the very first lap, well, yeah, it's exactly what we expected. Rob Manson in that car to be able to take the lead. But then there was a problem right off the bat. This car was stuck on the side of the road, caused him to go full course yellow for just a couple of laps. And then it became a battle between the Manson in this car, the Tatum Special, as well as the Allard. The Allard trying all kinds of stuff, trying to go around the outside. But then late in the race, this is the one that cost him the championship in this very first race. And as a result, Gary Cox in this 1953 Austin Healey Chevy Special takes the victory just barely ahead of that 1949 Jaguar Parkinson. And unfortunately, well, take a look at that. The Tatum Special still up in the gravel, and he's still thinking about what he was not able to accomplish on that very last lap. So now we can finally go racing on the Group 2B, the 1955-1964 GT. And Dick, why don't you start by giving us the rundown of the track?
Patrick Long, car 123, a 57 Porsche Speedster, is on pole, Boulder, Colorado. Alek Hugo, car 491, Mill Valley, alongside in a Porsche 356B.
Alan Goodman in a 1954 Porsche 356. Jeffrey Abramson in a 1955 Morgan, affectionately called the Baby Doll.
Robert Stoker in Mill Valley, 56 Alfa Romeo Giulia 750 Spider. Daniel Schwartz, Bakersfield, 58 Turner 950S.
Greg Powell in a 1958 Morgan +4. William Lyon in a 1961 Porsche 356 Abarth.
Qaid Maroof, La Jolla, California, 60 Alfa Romeo SZ, a 60 Porsche Roadster, driven by Dave Hagen of Calistoga.
Ranson Webster is in a 1960 Porsche Abarth Carrera. John Ganaway out of Carmel Valley, California in a 1961 Triumph TR4.
Marnix Delaney in San Francisco, 64 Alfa Romeo TZ, that's the Tubolari. 57 Porsche 356 Speedster from Carmel Valley, Max Jamison.
Another 356 Speedster driven by Steve Schmidt out of Costa Mesa and David Hogier out of Santa Cruz in a 1959 Triumph TR3A.
Ned Speaker, Menlo Park, 61 Ferrari 250 GT short wheelbase Berlinetta. 59 Chevrolet Corvette from Pine Mountain Club, California, Ron Cressy.
Ron Erickson from Boulder, Colorado, 1957 Corvette. Tom Turner out of Danville and a 62 Triumph Spitfire.
Sean DeLuna, San Mateo, 56 MGA, 57 Alfa Romeo Veloci, Juan Apostle from Aptos, Lars Mapstead.
Charles Christensen out of Paso Robles is in a Porsche convertible. And we've got a 1963 Porsche 356 Super 90 being driven by Michael Sweeney out of Carmel.
59 Elba Courier Mark I from Seaside, Frank Diaquano, Terry Cowan from Bonita, California, 60 Austin Healey Sebring Sprite Coupe.
Paul Christensen out of Sparks, Nevada in a 1956 Porsche 356A, and Richard Johnson from Menlo Park in a 1959 Alfa Romeo 750.
56 Porsche 356A driven by Edward Hugo of Mill Valley, and Mike Leicester from Atascadero, 1958 Victress C2 Coupe.
George Kalfa from Germany in a 1957 Porsche 356 Speedster, and Ray Schubert from Los Gatos in a 1958 Denzel 1300.
From Woodside in a 62 Lotus Elite, Henry Moore, Don Tavini, Cave Creek, Arizona, 59 Porsche 356.
Rick Hayden out of Harbor City in a 1961 Volvo P1800. Rick Bill Rookledge out of Laguna Beach in a 1957 Austin A35.
From Danville, Jeffrey Abramson, 1950 MGTD, 58 Austin Healey Sprite. From Del Mar, Peter Smith.
And our two final competitors, Kevin Adair out of Fairfield, California in a 1959 Austin Healey 3000, and Ivan Lesnar out of White Rock, Canada in 1958 Austin Healey 106.
That is your starting field for the 1955 to 1964 GT cars.
And once again, as we talk about the fact that this track opened in 1957, these are the cars that probably would have been the early competitors as they were racing here in those early years, the first few years here at Laguna Seca.
I was here as a spectator in 1958, hanging on the fence down with the old turn 9, which is now turn 11.
So is this what it looked like?
Not quite. The field looked like that, but the facility has changed dramatically in the interim. Pace car looks like they pulled off, and we are ready to go.
Exactly. And up front, once again, we have Patrick Long in that number 123 Porsche Speedster. Beside him, Alek Hugo in a Porsche 356B. They're coming up the front straightaway to take the green flag. Patrick Long, of course, a very accomplished race car driver, holds the field back just a little bit, then puts his foot into it, comes underneath and takes the green flag, and now it's going to be a battle into turn 1, and you've got the third place car that is trying to go inside, the number 23 car of Ron Goodman, trying to make a move on Patrick Long, and that is a battle of champions right there. But Patrick Long takes the right line, manages to squeeze out, and he is able to control the lead as they go through that first hairpin turn.
Wow, those three Porsches that had a great battle at the front. Long and then Alek Hugo and Ron Goodman. They were three abreast as they crested the hill going into the Andretti hairpin before they sorted themselves out. Long held his line and was able to keep the other two Porsches behind him.
And nothing against Ron Goodman, but when you look at experience, Patrick Long has quite a bit. He is a factory Porsche driver. He has 2 championships at Le Mans in class. He has won Le Mans twice as a Porsche driver. So when it comes to experience in a car, he's the guy. Now, the question is the car better? And in fact, we got Ron Goodman as they're racing up the hill. He's able to take the lead and take away the position from Patrick Long, and that's got to make him feel good knowing he's just gotten ahead of that guy.
And I was going to say, the Morgan Baby Doll got up in the third spot momentarily, but then had a drop back as the Porsche took that third spot back.
So we've got 3 Porsches and then the Morgan, and that's the way we're sitting right now. Patrick Long, the accomplished Le Mans driver, is in second in that Porsche Speedster. And we've got number 491, Alek Hugo, who is in 3rd place right now with Ron Goodman, the 1954 Porsche 356, leading the way as they come down the hill from the corkscrew and get ready to enter that final turn as they go onto the front straightaway.
In SCCA production racing of this period, this time, Porsches and the Morgans battled it out in E-production. It was just a great battle between the two of them. Now that baby doll is not the E-production Morgan that would have run in that area. That's aluminum bodied car with Weber carburetors. That actually was bumped up 2 classes to C production, so that Morgan has an advantage. It's quicker than the Morgan in E production normally would have been. And you still got that good battle up front. Long is in 2nd spot, as you've got the leader, Ron Goodman. Alek Hugo 3rd. Abramson is 4th in the baby doll Morgan, and the Alfa Romeo Giulia is 5th. That's Robert Stoker.
Yeah, that Morgan baby doll really was a special that was ordered by Lou Spencer, and he ordered it from the factory in special racing specification. And he was racing it. Man, in fact, he raced it in 1982 to the SCCA C Production National Championship. So think about that. It was ordered in 1959, but it was still winning an SCCA championship in 1982.
That was quite the car. An aluminum body, which made it much lighter than the normal Morgan. And it still had that big Triumph engine. It was a heavy motor, but they took the SU carburetors off and put Webers on it, which made it a lot more powerful than it had been, with an oil cooler on it, a few other things. And it was a very fast car, as witnessed by the fact that he won national championships.
And we just watched this car, number 57, being driven by William Lyon. That's a 1961 Porsche 356 Abarth that was just able to take the position away of 6th place from a 1958 Turner 950S as they were going up the hill towards the corkscrew. Number 718 wasn't able to hang on quite as much, and as a result, that Porsche was able to take the lead and would take the position away from that 1958 Turner.
And that number 33 is what would be considered the normal E-production Morgan that's running in that group.
Yeah, Greg Powell is currently in 8th in a 1958 Morgan +4. Interesting, the Morgan look, the Morgan style has stayed as a very traditional build. Even modern cars are still coming out of Morgan and still have that same basic look. It's been modified and tweaked, but at the end of the day, it's very similar to the Morgan +4 that we saw running in its original form.
I owned and drove a Morgan for 50 years. What it do in San Francisco in 1959.
Wooden frame and everything?
Wooden subframe.
Wooden subframe. Yeah, it's hard to believe that Morgans had wooden subframes, but when everybody else was long since gone away from that. But it was an inexpensive way to put the car together and gave it a little bit of flex in the chassis.
A lot of flex in the chassis. Actually, if you parked one wheel up on the curb, you could not open the door.
That's really not a good sign, actually. Wow, watching as they head up the hill to the corkscrew, and some of the cars working really hard to try to make sure that they can maintain that as much as possible. That's number 123, the Patrick Long car. He's in 2nd place. Ron Goodman in the other Porsche, just a little bit out of his reach, but now Patrick Long is working hard to keep Alek Hugo in that 2nd Porsche 356 behind him.
That's the best battle on the track that we've seen. Long and Hugo, 1, 2, 3, and 491 to battle for 2nd overall. And Jeffrey Abramson in the Morgan Baby Doll, car 145, just kind of lurking behind him to see if they make contact and perhaps take each other off so he can move up a couple of spots.
You know, the Porsche 356, the concept from Porsche was simple. They felt it was better to have a lighter car with less power than a heavy car that had lots of power. The concept was light but nimble, and that was really the inspiration for the 356. The very first 356, if you want to call it, wasn't quite a production car, more of a one-off car that was built back in 1948. That's when it got its first road certification. It immediately went out and won the first race it was entered in Innsbruck, in Austria. So they knew they were onto something, and they began to slowly but surely build more of them, and they were modifying them very quickly and heavily as they first went along. And of course, the really significant thing was in 1951, that 356 won its class at Le Mans. That's really what launched Porsche into motor racing history.
Still hot and heavy, that battle for second overall between Patrick Long at 1-2-3 and Alek Hugo at 4-9-1. Goodman seems to be pulling away from both of them in the number 23 Porsche, and he is leading this event. Other good battles throughout the pack. You've got an Alfa and a Porsche fighting. There's an Elva Courier up there, and it looks like they're chasing a TBR, I believe. Not sure. We'll pick up the number on that car as he comes out of the Andretti hairpin.
Yeah, that number 110 is Frank D'Aquino out of Seaside, California. That's an Elva Courier right there. And, of course, right behind him is that Alfa Romeo. That's Richard Johnson in the 1959 Alfa Romeo 750 Julieta. Great listening to these cars as they go around the track. Classic sounds of these engines that we've heard once again in the early era and now continue. That's actually a Sprite that's ahead. I believe that's Terry Cowan's car.
It is number 2.
1960 Austin Healey Sebring Sprite Coupe. You know, people forget that while they think about the Sprites, they of course always think about the bug eyes and the later Spridgets, if we want to call them that had the open top, but they also built some Sebring Coupes that were relatively successful.
They were very successful. They were lightweight cars, and the easiest way to identify them was that they had wire wheels, which is not standard on the regular Bug-Eye Sprite.
Now we've got another epic battle on the track. Check this out. This is a Corvette, a 1957 Corvette. This number 283 being driven by Ron Erickson. And that number 34 car, that is a Porsche convertible from 1959 being driven by Charles Christensen. But as you see, going up the front straightaway, that Corvette and all that horsepower just pulls away.
283, the number on the car. That's the engine displacement, 283 cubic inches.
And at the back of that pack is, you see that yellow, I believe it's a TR3 that is at the back of that. You think about, some of these cars, for example, the 300 SL that we saw in the last field. There's an Alfa Romeo and Ferraris that are in this race, the Porsches. The TR2s and the TR3s are a very inexpensive way to go racing. Back up front, Patrick Long is doing a good job of trying to reel in Ron Goodman in that lead Porsche. He is now right on his tail because Patrick Long knows how to run an endurance race, knows how to work the tires, knows how to learn from the guy ahead of him. So now he is hounding him as they're coming down from the corkscrew, starting to go into that last turn. And the question is, will he be able to set him up for anything on that straightaway to be able to move into a position to take the lead going into the Andretti hairpin?
And Alek Hugo is staying right with him. You got to remember, almost all of the cars that are running this race were actual production cars that you could drive on the street. In fact, in some cases, they drove the car to the track, took the windscreen and the muffler off, put numbers on the side, taped up the headlights, and went racing.
Yeah, and going away up of that front straightaway in the drag race to the first turn, you've got the Morgan making a move to the inside, trying to get that Porsche 356, but he locks up the brakes. The Porsche goes to the outside and is able to maintain the position, takes his wheel off onto the dirt very slightly. The Morgan knows that he's fast. He's just got to figure out a way to get by. Meanwhile, we thought that Patrick Long might have something for that number 23 Ron Goodman 1954 Porsche 356, but on the front straightaway, Goodman just has the horsepower to pull away. So he was not able to take advantage of that. So there we still got the Morgan, who now he's trying to take a look to the inside yet again of Alek Hugo, locking up the left front tire and can't take advantage of the horsepower that he's got. So as a result, he is still behind. Now he's trying to make a move going up the hill. He is working hard. They're almost side by side, but not quite enough. And as a result, the Morgan will pull in, move in behind, and go up the hill. Now we've got a problem with Patrick Long. Patrick Long has his hand in the air and waving at the other two drivers behind him to go ahead and take the position. So Patrick Long, who is battling for the lead of this race with Ron Goodman, is still running, still under power, but he apparently allowed those two guys to move forward because he's had some kind of a problem in the car.
Yeah, he's running at a reduced speed, it looks like, as he comes down the hill. My guess is he'll probably pit, but as a result of Long's retirement, Hugo and Abramson move up to second and third in the Porsche and the Morgan.
But that Alek Hugo, Jeffrey Abramson battle is truly one of the best we've got going in there. We saw Abramson as he came out of turn 11 onto the front straightaway, hanging the tail out just a little bit. He is working really hard to get as close as he possibly can to Alek Hugo.
Let's see what he can do when they go down to the Andretti hairpin. He looks to the outside, tries to pull alongside. Not going to happen, as Hugo is right in the center of the course. Did not give him much room. He's going to have to tuck in behind. Let's see if he can do it again in the infield. Last time he tried it at the entrance to turn 5, pulled up alongside, then he locked up his brakes and couldn't go through. He had to back off and let Hugo get away. But in the meantime, Goodman has been leading almost this entire race once he got around Patrick Long, who has gone into the pits, by the way.
And there we can see that the Morgan baby doll, now they're side by side. The Morgan's got a lot of speed going in. This time he does not lock up the brakes, and he takes the position for second place away from Alek Hugo and heads up the hill trying to chase the leader, Ron Goodman.
He made the move on turn 5, just where I thought he would, making that inside pass. They're going to encounter a bunch of traffic going up the hill. They're going by a Lotus Elite now, it looks like, and chasing Goodman, who is on his way to the top of the hill and the corkscrew. Now let's see what Abramson can do now that he's gotten around Hugo. See if he can close in on Ron Goodman, the race leader.
And coming down through the corkscrew, Hugo has the lead, but Abramson Abramson has second. Hugo in that Porsche is right up on his tail going through the corkscrew, but once they start to use some horsepower, well, that is when the Morgan begins to stretch out just a little bit. Although I tell you, the Morgan's tail has been hanging out an awful lot as it goes through some of these faster turns. Now we're watching as it goes onto the front straightaway. Got it under control, and it's going to be the drag race. Let's see what the horsepower difference is like between the Morgan and the Porsche ahead of it.
They cross the start-finish line. They crest the hill now, begin their descent into the Andretti hairpin. Again, brake lockup big time on the Morgan. You can see the tire smoke coming off. Looks like it was the left rear that time. Boy, he's got a flat spot those tires, but he's really closed it up on Ron Goodman. He looks to the inside as they go down into turn 2. That's not going to work, and he has to back out of it as they go under the bridge in the infield area. He's probably going to try and do it going into 5 like he did on Alek Hugo. They're going through 4 now, heading through that infield area. They'll go under the Mother's Bridge, and here comes turn 5. But he's not close enough this time to make the move. He's just going to have to tuck in behind Goodman and follow up the hill. Alek Hugo just stays there in 3rd spot, waiting for a mistake or waiting for Abramson to overdo it perhaps so he can get back around him.
So Ron Goodman for the first half of the race had to watch with Patrick Long in his mirror as Patrick was getting closer and closer. And then when Patrick Long was gone, I think he thought he was going to get a break. And now that Jeffrey Abramson and that Morgan baby doll has moved past and into second place, he's starting to do a little bit of the hounding. As they go down through the corkscrew right now, I think that the Porsches have the advantage going through the corkscrew, but the Morgan seems to be able to pick up speed coming out of the turns fairly well, so that allows him to close. We'll see if he can get close at the very end, but now we're watching, once again, the 491 of Alek Hugo in that Porsche 356 as they come down the hill. He gets a good run on the Morgan, but it's not enough. So it's still 1, 2, 3, Ron Goodman in the Porsche 356. Jeffrey Abramson in the 1959 Morgan Baby Doll 4, and Alek Hugo in the 1962 Porsche 356 as they come up the hill.
Oh, and somebody got a furl black flag. I think that could have been Abramson, and we are on the last lap. A furl black flag is a warning. Improve your driving or you will be pulled in for a consultation.
And it's possible it's a result of what happened on that last lap when he was on the inside of the Porsche trying to make the move. Now, he did get out of it. So once again, he locked it up and let the other Porsche move ahead, but he was working it really hard. I think it just boils down to Abramson is so close. He sees that he can get within range. He can almost smell the exhaust fumes, but he just doesn't have enough to be able to pull it off. And now with all the back markers, the question is a back marker going to help or hurt Abramson? And I think in this case, they got a back marker between them, so that's not going to help him. But in fact, Alek Hugo is trying to take advantage of that situation. For a moment, he was trying to see if there was a way to thread the needle between the two, but instead he just tucked in back behind that number 145 of the Morgan. And as they go up the hill, the question is, are they going to be able to get around all these back markers so they can go through the corkscrew cleanly? But it looks like they will, so they will just be able to continue to do battle. But meanwhile, Goodman has stretched out his lead as a result of these back markers.
Yeah, it's allowed him to pull away, but he's running into more traffic as it is. Evidently, the stewards must have thought that Abramson's driving was a bit too aggressive. That's why he got the warning, the furled black flag. Coming off the hill, no change. It's still Goodman leading them down to the checkered flag, followed by Abramson in the Morgan and Hugo in the Porsche, going down into the final corner.
Well, Abramson has worked it really hard. You saw him each time. Sometimes the tail was hanging out, the brakes were locking up. They were having a hard time trying to hang on, but they did their best job going up the main straightaway, going underneath the flag. And now that was not one lap to go because that was just the furled black flag that they got. So they're going to have at least another couple laps. And they were giving the passing sign, not obviously to our leaders, but to all the back markers that they're going past.
Yeah, that flag indicates watch your mirrors. You are being overtaken by a faster car. Give way. You'll notice on the Morgan, on the picture after the 145, this car ran in. So it's Goodman with about a not quite 3-second lead, 2.7 seconds in his Porsche over Abramson in the Morgan Baby Doll. Then Alek Hugo third in his Porsche, 1962 356B. William Lyon has brought that Porsche Abarth up to fourth spot. And Robert Stoker in the Alfa Romeo Julieta running in fifth.
And here's the battle for sixth. We've got Ranson Weber in a 1960 Porsche Abarth right there, and Kaid Marouf in that number 138, the 1960 Alfa Romeo SZ. These two guys are going at it right now for sixth and seventh. Alfa Romeo, of course, a long racing history. You know, we know about the Porsche racing history, but Alfa Romeo, as part of the, before the World Championship, you know, they were a great car manufacturer in Italy, did a lot of racing. And when the Formula One World Championship started out, Alfa was a part of that from the word go.
Bigger motor in that Porsche, almost 2-liter. That Alfa of Marouf, only a 1300cc engine, but he is staying right with him. In the meantime, no change in that battle at the front. Goodman with a comfortable lead, almost 3 seconds, and Abramson in the Baby Doll running in second, and Hugo in his Porsche running third. Lyon did a good job. He has moved up to fourth. He started in 8th position, so he's moved his way up through the field as well.
Yeah, William Lyon in that 1961 Porsche 356 Abarth that we saw in the back there. But these three cars, once Patrick Long pulled off, these three cars have simply been the race. And Jeffrey Abramson for a long time was working so hard trying to catch up to the number 23. Combination of aggressive driving and overusing the tires. And he got a little bit of a warning that, you know, maybe he wants to back off just a little bit. So as a result, I think he's in a situation where he could look, but he just can't quite get close enough. And he tried multiple times, but I think he finally figured out it just wasn't going to work. And he was pushing the limits of that car on a regular basis. And sooner or later, there was going to be a problem.
I think his goal now is probably to maintain second place to the finishes. We've been told that this is the final lap. And wow, Hugo goes out way wide, uses a lot of track and catches up. He's closing on Abramson and the Morgan as they go to the top of the hill. It's going to be interesting when they start down through the corkscrew. He's about a half a car length back. This battle's going to go all the way down to the wire. Goodman clear of them by about a second and a half. Coming down off the hill, here's Abramson in that blue Morgan. That's Kingfisher blue, the factory color. And now it looks like Abramson has gotten himself a little bit of breathing room from Hugo as they come out of the final pair of corners. There's Goodman coming through turn 11. He's going to accelerate up the start-finish straightaway, and he'll be looking for a checkered flag. He comes up the straight, crosses the stripe, gets the flag for the win. Abramson in the Morgan will finish second, and Hugo in his Porsche is third. William Lyon should cross the line in fourth spot in his Porsche, and Stoker will be fifth in the Alfa Romeo Giulia.
And this is the battle in the back of the pack. We've got that number 49, that's in sixth place. The number 138 Alfa right there is in seventh. And the number 718, 1958 Turner 950S being driven by Daniel Schwartz. That right now is in eighth place, and that's the way they're going to finish as they come up across the line. And I did notice that there was some body damage to the right rear of Ron Goodman's Porsche 356. Now, the question is it possible that when the Morgan was trying to make the move, was there a little contact at that point? Now, I don't see any damage to the Morgan, but as you look right there, you've got some body damage to the right rear of the 356. So it is possible that they might have had a little bit of contact, or it's possible they came into this race with that. But I remember looking at that. That was a very close situation between them. But congratulations to Ron Goodman and that 1954 Porsche as he comes up over the hill. Once again, that Porsche with all the great racing history, and once again it comes away with yet another victory. And unfortunate for Patrick Long, didn't quite work out. Remember, Patrick Long started on the pole, but then Goodman on the inside just seemed to have more horsepower, was able to make the move going up through the first lap, and as a result was able to take the lead. And then from that on in, well, it was just competition all over the place, whether it was the Patrick Long car. But look, this is where they were trying to work so hard, where Abramson was trying to move up on the inside. And this was as they were coming up the hill when Patrick Long realized he had a problem, was waving everybody to go by, and he was able to work his way back to the pits, but unfortunately was not able to finish the race. And this is where Abramson made the move into second place. This is how he got past Alek Hugo. And then he took off after the leader in the number 23. And that's, I believe, where they made a little bit of contact right there. And that's probably why he got a warning from the steward saying, you need to pay a little more attention. We don't want to get that close. So that's the way they finished. Ron Goodman winning the race in that Porsche 356. Jeffrey Abramson in a 1959 Morgan Baby Doll 4, and Alek Hugo in the 1962 Porsche 356B.
Well, that was a recreation of a 1960s production car battle, Porsche and Morgan.
Now, they were battling about over those 45, 50 years ago, and now they are continuing to battle here at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca as part of the Rolex Monterey Motorsports Reunion Weekend. And our next race up is going to be the Group 3B. That's the vintage Formula Ford. These are Formula Fords from 1967 to 1981, and this is a full field. Right now, we have 56 cars that are entered into this race. All right, so the question we're going to have is, do they have any cars left on the track that they're going to have to pull in? We'll have to figure out whether there's going to be any delays from the start of the next race. But once again, 56 Formula Fords that have come out here to run in this historic vintage Formula Ford race here at Monterey and Laguna Seca.
Quite an array of manufacturers, as we've mentioned earlier. Well over 100 companies tried their hand at building Formula Fords. Some were minor producers, maybe producing just a handful of cars or even a one-off. Others producing 300 and 400 cars a year. But Formula Ford was the proving ground for young drivers. The young guns would go into Formula Ford and show off their skills, hoping to catch the eye of owners of cars in larger classes so they could work their way up and ideally get up to Formula One. Now they start in go-karts instead of Formula Fords.
Well, go-karts to Formula Ford. Now it's called Formula F. All right, we're not going to get through the entire field, but we'll get through as much of it as we can before the race starts. Let's run down the starting grid. On the pole, number 55, Ethan Schipper in a 1981 Crossley 45F.
Alongside Michael Miller in a 70 Titan Mark 6.
Danny Baker from San Francisco in a 1969 Lotus 61.
Thomas Palmateer, 71 Hawk DL2B, and Bob Lesnett in a 1973 Titan Mark 6.
Todd Willing in a 1972 Merlin Mark 20A, and Andrew Waite in a Lola T204.
Art Hebert, 70 Titan Mark 6. Laurent Parmentier, 70 Crosley 1620F.
Martin Lauber in a 1970 Titan Mark 6A, and Mark Jaremko out of Spokane in a 1977 Crossley 35.
Jacques Drasson in a 1977 All-American Racers Eagle DGF. Ed Lauber in a 69 Titan Mark 5.
Another Eagle is being driven by Lawrence Webster, and Courtney Crone is in a 72 Eldon.
Austin Newman in a 71 Lola T202. Russell Werner in an 81 Van Diemen VD81.
Chris Porritt in a 1971 Lola T202. Dave Zerlinden in a 1969 Merlin Mark 17.
Steve Romack drives a 70 Titan Mark 6, another 70 Titan Mark 6 alongside Dwight Matheson.
Carl Moore in another Titan Mark 4, and Nicholas Hunziker in a 1969 Lotus 51.
Then it's David Alvarado in a 70 Titan M6, Michael Edick, 69 Lotus 61 Formula Ford.
Michael Weirick in a 72 Lola T204, and Ralph Hill in a 79 Crossley.
Daniel Wise, 73 Crossley 25F, a 1969 Merlin Mark 11A driven by Chris Locke.
Robert Thull in a 1972 Titan Mark 6, and Greg Broman in a 1971 Lotus 69.
Mark Colbert, 70 Titan Mark 6A and 82 Royale RP31 driven by Jeffrey Rothman.
Ramleth Gear in a 1967 Lotus 51, and David Cooper in a 1980 Van Diemen.
Scott Durnick in a 68 Lotus 51, Paul Kitchen, 69 Lotus 61.
Jay Streets is in a 1972 Winkleman. John Brandstad is in a 1981 Tyga Formula Ford.
Michael McDermott, 71 Titan Mark 6, Ross Lindell, 69 Merlin Mark 11A.
Brian Andrews in a Titan Mark 4, and Jonathan Kitchen in a Lotus 61.
Alan Dazzani, 77 Royal RP24, Gary Guzman in a 71 March 719.
Jack Behringer in a Crossley 40F, and Andrew Warburton in a Caldwell D9.
Steve Mercer in a 1969 Alexis Mark 15, 71 Winkleman WTF3A, Darrell LeBlanc.
Greg Cavan in a 1975 Koenig Heath Nomad, and Thomas Lacosta in a 1969 Techno.
George Jewett, 69 Merlin Mark 11, Kevin Pitts, 68 Legrand Mark 10.
In the final three competitors, we got John LeCarner in a 1969 Lotus 51A, Greg Endenholm in a 1972 Eldon, and Will Jackson in a 1972 Titan Mark 6. And you can just see by the names of the cars that we've got here, there were a large number of producers of these cars. Crossley, Titan, Lotus, Hawk, Merlin, Lola, Crossley, we've got All-American Eagle, we've got Van Diemen, Eldon, all kinds of manufacturers were building these cars at various points in time. And remember, the original idea for Formula Ford came out of England. The idea was that they wanted a relatively inexpensive car with a solid engine that they could use for the racing schools. And as a result, well, that's how the Formula Ford idea came out. Initially, they went out looking for companies to build them. Not a lot of companies were interested, but Lotus said, you know, we've got a Lotus 31 that we could repurpose and put that engine in. And that was really the beginning of the Formula Ford era.
Lights are out on the pace car as they lead the field down into turn 10. It's going to make that right-hander, then the pace car will slide off to the left and take the pit exit between 10 and 11, releasing the field to the pole sitter, Ethan Schipper, who will look for the green flag as he leads the field around turn 11 and up the front straightaway.
And it's interesting to look at, while all these cars were designed under the same specifications, each one has a slightly different approach as to how they were going to do it. Of course, there are different eras here. They'll come up out of turn 11, they'll head into the front straightaway, get the green flag, and we are racing in Group 3B, the historic Formula Ford. Cars from 1967 to 1981, and Ethan Schipper takes the lead going into the very first turn. The question is, does Mike Miller on the outside have anything to be able to take advantage of it?
Doesn't appear to. He's got to tuck in behind. Remember, all these cars have the same engine, 1600cc Ford. As they come out of the Andretti hairpin, Shepard leads the field through mostly single file now as they start working through that infield complex, 3 and 4. If anybody makes a move, the favorite passing spot is turn 5, the turn that takes you to the climb up the hill to the corkscrew. Somebody kicked up a little dust over there at the exit of turn 4. Miller looks outside, going into 5, not the place to be, and Shepard able to hold him off and will lead him up the hill. Miller right in the tracks of Shepard now, looking for a way around, looking left, looking right, can't get it done. In the meantime, you've got Danny Baker right on Miller's tail, so you've got... And there goes Miller now, making a move on the inside as they go up to the top of the hill. If he can hold that line, he'll get to the corkscrew first. And he's getting squeezed by Ethan Schipper. Can't do it, has to back out of it. Actually drove it off the course and on the pavement. And I think that's allowed Danny Baker to pull alongside Miller as they come down. Wow, a lot of action on that first lap, Rick.
This is classic Formula Ford racing. The cars are so equal. It's just a matter of trying to figure out how to set them up a little better, and more importantly, how to use your lines just a little bit better. And that car right there, that number 110, it originally started in 6th, and he has now worked his way up where he was in 4th, but now we got a drag race that he's having with the number 12 car of Thomas Parmenter as they're going up with that Hawk. So he manages to squeeze him out just a little bit, and he's in 4th now. Can he hold on to the position going into the Andretti hairpin? Because the reality is that that other car, the Palmateer car, had the better line, but the number 110, Bob Lesnett, manages to hold on to the position. Meanwhile, up front, the number 55, Ethan Schipper, he had to battle during that first lap, but he still maintains his lead.
Mike Miller still running second, and he's pursued by Danny Baker. Someone just got off behind, I think it was the 4th or 5th place car, got off into the dirt. We'll have to look at it when they come back into our picture. In the meantime, Shepard able to hold off Miller, but for how long? Miller really pressing and challenging.
And Bob Lesnett just made a move on Danny Baker for 3rd place, going inside, nice smooth move. Baker, meanwhile, just had to get off just a little bit. He's in that Lotus, that green and yellow Lotus. He took a look to the inside of Lesnett, but decided he couldn't quite pull that one off. So now he's going to follow up. Meanwhile, we got a move for the lead. A challenge once again as they start to head up by turn number 7 and turn number 8, getting ready to go into the corkscrew.
And Shepard had his hand up in the air for a minute for something. I don't know what that was all about. But look at Lesnett. He's all over the back of Mike Miller now as they come down through Wayne Rainey curve, heading down into 10.
Remember, Lesnett started 5th, so he's already moved up 2 position. He's got a strong race car. Now the question is, does he have anything to challenge those top 2? And we've got a car that's gone off course and is down in the gravel, and as a result, we've got a safety car out on the track, and we have a full course caution. It's interesting when you look at how deeply he is buried in the gravel.
Yeah, it's all the way up to the gearbox, and looking at the rear suspension's buried. The left rear wheel looks like it's in that gravel up to the hub. Trying to hook that car up. They'll winch him out. Tow truck trying to figure out the best way to get it done.
And if you're ever thinking about going vintage racing, I mean, it's great to look at some of the beautiful cars that we've had on the track this weekend. The reality is going Formula Ford is a fairly inexpensive way to do it. Over the years, tons of these cars have been built. There's a lot of them that are still for sale in the aftermarket. There's great racing. I mean, once again, you can see the number of cars that we've got here in this particular race. We had 56 cars that were entered. So you've got an awful lot of big fields. You've got the ability, even though you may not be at the front of the pack, you know you're going to have great racing for 20th, 30th, 40th, even 50th place is going to have a great race.
Yeah, 56 cars were entered, and looking at our timing monitor, which only goes to 50th place, 50 cars are running, and probably more. They're all scrubbing tires now. Shepard, Mike Miller, Lesnett, Baker, Palmateer. That list of the top 5: a Crossley, a pair of Titans, a Lotus, and a Hawk.
Yeah, Crossley was actually founded back in, well, the mid-50s when John Crossley, he was a former champion motorcyclist. That's when he built his first racing car. That was the Crossley Mark I, which, of course, was followed by the Mark II and the Mark III. But those weren't Formula Fords. But he was pretty smart. He saw the creation of the first Formula Ford and thought, you know, that is something I need to get involved with. And so he did. In fact, he built his first one in 1969. That is the legendary 16F. And Gary Birrell automatically went out and took that car the very first year to the European Formula Ford Championship. And there you see the number 110 car. That's a Titan. That's the one being driven by Bob Lesnett that started in 5th and moved its way up. And Titan, well, that was 2 guys. That was Charles Lucas and another guy by the name of Roy Thomas. Charles Lucas was really the money man in the deal, and Roy Thomas was the engineer. And, of course, there's Lotus. Lotus that really started the Formula Ford era when it took up the challenge to come up with a Formula Ford car, taking the Lotus 31 and really repurposing it, a Formula Junior car that they repurposed and put into use as a Formula Ford car. And then, of course, we've got plenty of other manufacturers we've talked about. There's Hawk, there's Merlin, Crossley, All-American racers. It's amazing to think that Van Diemen was out there. Lola, LeGrand, Techno, Royale, Winkleman, all cars that we remember so well. And it seems like it doesn't matter what era you're talking about. Formula Ford has always had really strong fields. And the yellow flags will continue. They still don't have the course cleared, so we're going to have to take another lap under yellow.
Those top 4 drivers are all very experienced drivers that have been racing for quite some time. Ethan Shepard in 55, Miller in 93, Bob Lesnett actually has a race preparation business up in Marin County. He's running in 3rd spot. He used to run a team in the American Cities Racing League, which was basically sports 2000 racers powered by the Ford 2-liter Pinto engine. Danny Baker, a lot of experience in Formula cars as well. He's in 4th spot, and Palmateer in number 12 is your 5th place car. Good cars, good driving skills at the lead pack. There's going to be a lot of action when the yellow flag comes out and they go back to green flag racing. In the meantime, they just kind of have to sit and wait, keep the temperatures up on those tires, and wait for the green flag to come out, and they'll have back at it.
And once again, I love to look at the different styles, the different ways, and realizing, you know, we've got quite a span of cars, and we've got some from the late 60s, we've got some from the early 80s. So it does span a period of time from 1967 to 1981. But they all had a different approach as to how they wanted to solve the problem of how to go quick in a Formula Ford car. What was the best way to handle the suspension? What was the best way to do the body work? You know, whether it's the closed nose, the open nose, whatever it may be. They all had a different way of approaching it. And what's really interesting is you've got Ethan Schipper, who currently is in the lead in a 1981 Crossley 45 in 1981, and then we got Michael Miller in a 1970 Titan.
Looks like the lights might be out atop the pace car. If they are, that's an indication that we're going to go green flag when they come back down to start finish. We'll keep our eye on that as the pace car leads them up the top of the hill to the corkscrew.
Now check that out, that number 46 right there. That's an All-American Racers Eagle. It's even got the Eagle paint scheme on it, so that's a classic race car. And you're right, the lights are out on the pace car.
Here they come. The battle's about to resume. Shepard, Miller, and Lesnett. We'll see if Lesnett can continue his charge toward the front. They all come screaming out of turn 11. Accelerate up to start finish straightaway, taking the green flag. Miller tries to close on Shepard while Lesnett is trying to close on him. It looks like Baker is fighting with Lesnett now. There's 2 rows, 2 abreast going down into the Andretti hairpin.
And the number 93 of Michael Miller moved to the inside and took the position away from Ethan Schipper. Meanwhile, the battle in the back, that is once again Danny Baker and Bob Lesnett going at each other. Bob Lesnett, of course, in the 110, that maroon-colored car, and Danny Baker in the yellow and green car. But now it's number 93, Michael Miller, in the 1970 Titan Mark VI, who has the lead, and it looks like Ethan Schipper is under attack by that number 110 Bob Lesnett Titan, as he's on the outside. They're side by side as they go up the hill, and he's off into the dirt.
Yeah, they touched wheels, and that pushed Lesnett off into the dirt. He managed to keep it headed in the right direction, and now he's rejoined in 4th spot behind Danny Baker.
They gave Danny Baker the advantage going up the hill there, and it looked like Thomas Palmateer was also trying to take advantage from the back. But now, once again, we've had a lead change. We've got Michael Miller in the lead as they come down out of the corkscrew. Ethan Schipper is in 2nd place in that number 55, 1981 Crossley 45.
Keep your eye on Lesnett. Unless he's had some suspension damage, I would expect him to start charging back up through the field. The next man he's going to try and repass is Danny Baker. He got around him once, and then as they touched wheels going up the hill, he touched wheels with Shepard, I believe, yes, and he did go off, and Baker got around him. Shepard challenging for the lead on Miller.
Trying to do it on the outside of the Andretti hairpin, really hard to do, but he can't maintain side by side, but it may give him an advantage coming out. Let's see, can he take advantage of the power he had going in? Nope, he's going to have to tuck in behind, and meanwhile, it's Danny Baker in 3rd in that Lotus 61.
Lesnett is regrouping and trying to get back up on Danny Baker. We'll see if he can make a move. Looks to the inside as they go through 3 and 4. Can't get it done there. Best place for him to try that would be on the inside of turn 5. Boy, look at Shepard all over the back of Miller as they go into turn 5. Just not close enough to get it done. Has to tuck in behind as Lesnar tucks in behind Danny Baker as they head up the hill. And Palmateer's making this a 5-car battle.
And this is exactly what they dreamed of when they wanted Formula Ford racing. The idea being that these cars are so equal that the racing competition could be so great, so wheel to wheel, and that's exactly what we've seen. Once again, Schipper comes so close. He knows if Miller just makes one mistake, he's going to be all over him, tucking in as close as he can to the back of that gearbox.
Down the hill one more time. Miller with about 1.5, 2-car length lead as they go down into turn 10. Lesnar closing on Baker. He's going to try and make a move to regain 3rd spot. He might try it when they get up into the Andretti hairpin. You can see Lesnar really slide the car around, almost drifts it around turn 11.
And there's our top 5 as we go into the next lap, going down into that hairpin. Michael Miller continues to lead the way, having taken the lead from Ethan Shepard. Everybody's looking to try and see if they can get a better line, but going through this lap, no one's making a move change. Danny Baker's in 3rd, Bob Lesnet is in 4th, and Thomas Palmateer is in 5th. It's a Titan, a Crossley, a Lotus, a Titan, and then a Hawk.
They're so tightly grouped, you could throw a blanket over the top 5 and cover them all.
Yeah, Bob Lesnet, who got off the track, was moving up at one point. Now is a little more frustrating. I think he's trying to take a look, but still doesn't have the speed going up the hill.
We'll watch him now as they go over into that turn 5 area. This is where a lot of the passing did take place earlier. A lot of people like to pass on the entrance to turn 5. They'll get on the inside, carry a lot of speed through there, and it gives them more speed going up the hill.
And there we've got the pack that is being led by Todd Willing and Arthur Herbert. And I think Laurent Palmateer made a move on Martin Hebert. So I think that position may have changed. But that number 41 is a 1972 Merlin. And there you look on the inside, that is the number 11A of Laurent Palmateer trying to take the position back. But he can't quite pull it off as they go down through the corkscrew. And in fact, he's almost coming under a track by Mark Cheremko in a 1977 Crossley.
So good battles throughout the pack. We've been focusing primarily on that lead group that is so tight. Those 5 cars separated by 1.3 seconds. Out from turn 11, up the start-finish straightaway one more time. That is a good battle you were talking about, Rick, is that those 5 cars are all very close together as well. You can see how much of the pavement they use in this camera shot. They come way out wide in turn 11. And again, the key to a fast lap here at Laguna Seca is a good exit speed out of turn 11. Quick shot of that digital speed readout atop the start-finish bridge shows them at 106 miles an hour, and that speed is measured at the crest of the hill just past start-finish before they start their descent into the Andretti hairpin.
And if you've never had a chance to drive a Formula Ford, I urge you to do it one way or another, whether it's through some kind of driving school or vintage racing, because while the top speed may not be great, the sensation of speed is, as you see the leaders starting to go through some of the back markers. And does it look like the number 55 of Ethan Shepard has moved back into the lead ahead of Michael Miller? Indeed he has. Ethan Shepard in the 1981 Crossley 45F has taken the lead back away from Michael Miller. And right behind him is Danny Baker in that 1969 Lotus 61.
Lesnet's still running in the 4th spot, followed by Palmateer, so no change except for the 2 cars in front. Shepard back in the number 1 spot. Miller running in 2nd.
We've got 1 through 4 that have definitely stayed together, but the 5th place car, the car driven by Thomas Palmateer, has drifted back just a little bit. So now it's just a 4-car pack. And there you see Michael Miller trying to figure out if he can take a different line going through the hairpin that might give him an advantage over Ethan Shepard. Remember, Ethan Shepard started this race in the lead, lost it to Michael Miller, and now Michael Miller has lost the lead to Ethan Shepard again.
And Danny Baker, who started 3rd, had actually dropped to 4th as Lesnet had gotten around him. but then Lesnett banged wheels with another car going up into turn 5, went off course, allowed Baker to regain that 3rd spot, and Lesnett is currently running in 4th spot and just can't seem to get close enough to make a move on Baker to regain 3rd. Perhaps there was some damage to his car. Banged wheels got all 4 wheels off the course into the dirt on the exit of 5. Look at the leaders going around traffic.
Boy,
Ethan
Ethan
Schipper's
Schipper
making a move on Shepard. He tried.
Schipper took a dive move to get around one of the back markers. I think at first he was going to go to the right, and then the last second decided to go to the left. And by the way, the car they just passed was the 49th place car. So they've already lapped about 7 cars, but still they're spread out all over this track. Meanwhile, Shepard has a pretty commanding lead as they come down off of the corkscrew, heading down into turn 11, just heading out onto the front straightaway. And when I say commanding, it's only about 0.3 of a second.
Yeah, I was going to say anything more than 2 car lengths is a commanding lead with this group.
Exactly.
We'll check that gap when they cross the start-finish line as our monitor will update. It's a half a second, 0.576 of a second. Down into the Andretti hairpin one more time. But looks like Shepard is starting to stretch it out a little bit. He's opening that gap even more now as they come out of the Andretti hairpin and go through the infield turns 3 and 4 under the tire bridges. They come back out and go up the hill through turn 5.
That number 98 car, that's being driven by Robert Thrall. That's a 1972 Titan Mark 6. Remember, Titan was that company I was telling you about that they built a number of Formula Ford racers. There we see one of them getting off the road just a little bit, but the Mark 6 was a huge seller for Titan. And I think they built something in the range of 300 of those.
Yeah, I think it's 300.
There's even a Titan registry where you could go online and list your Titan and make it a part of the living history, and I should say the living and racing history of the Titan Formula Ford world.
Still lots of good racing throughout the field as you've got them side by side going down into the Andretti hairpin. There's a good battle between 65 and 7. They were wheel to wheel going through the Andretti hairpin. David Cooper in car number 7. That's a Van Diemen VD80, and 65 Bramleth Geyer and a 67 Lotus 51.
And look at this pack as they're coming up through. I mean, there is racing everywhere. And once again, like I said earlier, it doesn't matter whether you're racing for the lead, whether you're racing for 10th, 20th, 30th. We're talking about guys who are in 35th and 36th that they're battling it out right now.
They're battling it out just as if they were battling for the overall lead. You find someone that has got your match speed and you can race with them and you can have a great time out there.
And the great thing is you get the opportunity to learn how to race. That's what these cars allow you to do because they're so equal. It becomes looking at other people's driving styles and seeing what you can do. But now as we look up front, Baker and Miller, a situation where the Lotus 61 is right behind Michael Miller. For a moment, they had swapped positions on the last lap, but now Michael Miller has taken it back with that number 13 of Danny Baker in the 1969 Lotus 61. Now this is where, once again, Baker had the position, but the 93 of Michael Miller and that Titan Mark 6 took it back.
And Lesnett pretty much has given up hope, I think, of battling with Baker and Miller and is content to settle for 4th spot at this point. To say possibly damaged the suspension a little bit when he did bang wheels with the car in the exit of turn 5, forcing him to go all 4 wheels off the course.
And you've got to be cautious. Remember, this is vintage racing. While the goal is to win, the goal is to get, move up as much as you can. They really frown on doing damage to each other. So as a result, you don't want to bang wheels too much, especially cause damage and cause a situation where somebody can be hurt.
Shepard has used the traffic to his advantage and now pulled out a huge lead, probably close to 2 seconds.
And we understand that was the checkered flag.
The checkered flag.
We have a hard time seeing the flag stand from here, but that's the checkered flag, and Ethan Shepard in that 1981 Crossley 45F will take the victory. He was in the lead at the start of the race, lost it briefly, and then gained it back. Michael Miller in that Titan Mark 6 will finish second. Danny Baker in the Lotus 61. Bob Lesnet, who had a pretty exciting race early on in a 1973 Titan Mark VI, and Thomas Palmateer will finish 5th in a 1971 Hawk DL2B.
Todd Willing, 6th in the Merlin Mark 20A, car 41, followed by Martin Lauber, number 5, a 70 Titan Mark 6A. Then Laurent, Palmateer 11A, Crossley 1620F, Arthur Hebert 9th 86, Titan Mark 6, and Mark Jaremko completes the top 10 in car 101, a 77 Crossley 35F.
A reminder, we're going to get about a 15-minute break between races. So there'll be a little bit of a break, chance to go off and get a snack and maybe check the concession stands, buy yourself a great WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca shirt during the brief break we have, and then we'll get back to the racing action after that 15-minute break with Group 4B. All right, let's check some of the highlights of that last race that came off, that Formula Ford race that was exciting from 1st through 56. And as they went down into that first turn, it was quite a pack, but Ethan Schipper in that Crossley took the lead and held on to it, but boy, they were tooth and nail the first few laps. Michael Miller trying to take a look to the inside, but Shepard had nothing of it. He kept hanging on. And it wasn't a perfect day. A couple cars did go off. The good news is we only had one full course yellow. Once they got running again, though, 93 of Michael Miller looked to the inside of Ethan Shepard, took the position away. And then there was a battle in behind, that number 110 car, Bob Lesnet. He was working hard trying to catch up to the lead pack, but once again, just a little too much got off the track, and as a result, it wasn't quite as smooth as he liked. And from that point on, he wasn't quite as strong. As they came up through the back markers, look at the evasive maneuvers as they were going around. That was Ethan Shepard in the front who dove to the left. And Michael Miller was able to take the lead at one point, but then had to give it up. And then Michael Miller lost the position to the number 13 of Danny Baker, but he was able to get second back when he was able to do it at the Andretti hairpin. And when it was all over, Ethan Shepard in that 1981 Crossley 45F took the victory here in the vintage Formula Ford race from 1967 to 1981. The Crossleys, the Titans, Lotus, Merlins, Lolas, everything you could possibly imagine from all of those manufacturers. And remember, 56 cars entered this race. It's a great way, if you're going to go historic racing, to do it. One more race before we get to our lunchtime. That's going to be race 4A. This is going to be the 1966 to 85 Masters Historic Formula One cars that are going to be out there. Boy, have you seen the collection of Ford GTs that are down there inside? Now, some of these are obviously recreations, but boy, it looks so great with the Shelbys, the Ford GT 40 look. And here we have the 4A group. We saw these guys out there yesterday. Historic Formula One from 1967 to 1985. These are considered Masters Historic. The Masters Historic is a group of races that happen around the country. So this is for points for a championship. All right, these guys are going to head on out, and we're going to call the grid as we've got it. We're going to start right here with Gregory Thornton, who's driving a 1982 Lotus 9D15. He won the race yesterday. Ethan Shepard in a 1980 Tyrrell 10 is in second.
Next up is Chris Farrell in a 1982 March 821, followed by Martin Lauber in a 1974 March 741.
James Hagan out of Ireland is in an 82 Tyrrell. Steve Romack in a 1976 March 761.
Chris Bender up next in a 1983 Arrows A6. Danny Baker back out, and this time he's driving a 1976 McLaren M23.
Ron Maiden is in a 1977 LEC, and Chris Locke out of California in a 1976 Lotus 77.
Bud Moeller in a 1979 Ensign MN179. Next up, a 1974 Shadow DN3 Harindra De Silva.
1982 Arrows A4 driven by Steve Hartley out of England. And then there's a Penske PC4 being driven by Doug Mockett.
Charles Warner drives a 1979 Shadow DN9B. Then it's a 75 Hill GH1 driven by Brad Hoyt.
Eric Hagen, a 1979 Tyrrell 9. John McKenna in a 1982 Williams FW08 Formula One.
Barry Williams in the last row. Charles Neerberg in a 1980 Williams FW07B. And Eric Joyner in a 1983 Williams FW08C.
they're going out there. You know, this was an interesting era, and it's important to point out that all of these cars, because of the Masters rules, have to be powered by a Cosworth DFB engine. They're limited to 10,000 RPM, so it makes it easier to A, work on the engines, and B, limit the speeds associated with these cars. Because you know, one of the problems with Formula One is things can very quickly get out of hand, and this Masters Series is designed very specifically not to let that happen.
We talked yesterday about the car with the Chesterfield livery, and I remember that car, and now I remember who was driving it, Brett Lunger.
Exactly. You know, this was the ground effect era of Formula One, the late 70s into the early 80s. Things were changing tremendously. You know, and while this group technically covers from 1966, the cars from 1966 through 85 are eligible, but in this case, the oldest car we've got is about 1974. The newest car we've got is from 1982. We do have a 1982 Williams out there, which was the same year that Keke Rosberg won the World Championship. So we've got a 1981 Williams, so that's representing that thing. So that one you saw there was the one that's being driven by Eric Joyner, a 1983 Williams.
Yeah, those Williams cars were very effective and competitive at the end of that era with Keke Rosberg and Alan Jones, each winning championships in those cars.
Yeah, Alan Jones winning the 1980 championship, Keke Rosberg winning the 1982 championship. As pointed out yesterday, Keke Rosberg was able to do it, winning only a single race that year in 1982. So his consistency is really what sealed the fate for him to be able to win that championship. Coming down out of the corkscrew, we got the light out in the pace car as they're going to come around down that final turn, turn 11, work their way onto the front straightaway, and they'll be getting the checkered flag here very shortly.
Gregory Thornton in that 82 Lotus 91.5 and Ethan Shepard on the front row in a 1980 Tyrrell 10, and a pair of Marches behind them, Chris Farrell and Martin Lauber. They come around turn 11, head up the start, finish straight. Nice slow pace, good tight group, waiting for the green flag, waiting, and it waves, and we are racing. The Lotus jumps out front. Gregory Thornton with a big lead already going down into turn 1. The Tyrrell tries to go around on the outside, closes up the gap, brakes a lot later, and just about has his front wing under the rear wing of Thornton. That's Ethan Schipper in that Tyrrell car number 33, running in second. One of the Marches, that's probably Martin Lauber right behind him as they go underneath the tire bridge in the infield area.
Yeah, technically Martin Lauber started in 4th, so he's already moved up 1 position. He was able to gain the position at the start and just get slightly ahead of that Tyrrell being driven by James Hagan, the 1982 Tyrrell. But he swings wide, and that's going to give the Tyrrell the ability to slide up on the inside as they go up the hill. They're doing a drag race up to the top. The number 6 Tyrrell trying to get to the inside, but the number 9 March 741, driven by Martin Lauber, is able to take the position back.
Yeah, watching for him as they get to the top of the hill. It is Thornton all the way, and he's opening up a bit of a gap over the Tyrrell of Ethan Shepard. Shepard in the 33 car. A little hunting with the nose, a little wiggle back and forth as he comes down out of turn 10. But Thornton, Shepard, Lauber, Hagan, top 4 in that order. We'll look for Steve Romack. He'll be driving another March. There's 2 Marches, orange color, easy to identify.
Remember I talked about the age difference in these cars. That March right there, that's a 1974 car. The car just ahead of the Tyrrell is a 1980 car, while the car even further ahead is the Lotus, the 1982 Lotus. So we've got a spread really of about 8 years, but look at the look and the technology and the way it changed between that lead car going back to the styling, the sports car nose of that March car. Look how the radiator on the March just kind of hanging off to the side. Boy, that March really wants to figure out an angle and a line that he can get on that Tyrrell.
And the driver of the March sits in a much more upright position.
Climbing up the hill, back onto the Ray Hall straightaway, heading up into the corkscrew. this is the cars that are up front. So once again, we've got Gregory Thornton leading in that Lotus, and then the number 33 car being driven by Ethan Schipper in a 1980 Tiro. And then, of course, the battle that we've got right now is between Schipper and Martin Lauber in a 1974 Porsche 741.
Yeah, Lauber is closing. Once he got around the turtle of James Hagan, he has closed up on Ethan Schipper and is trying to put himself into a position to challenge for that second spot. Meantime, Gregory Thornton has motored off into the distance. He's got about 3.3 seconds over that battle for second between Shepard and Lauber.
And you think back to the late 70s and the early 80s and how creative that Lotus was with the ground effects. Remember the car with the skirts where they were actually able to totally and completely seal it off. They were playing all kinds of games with active suspension, doing all kinds of work trying to get the advantage. Sometimes they were able to keep the advantage, sometimes they weren't. Of course, they had the World Championship when they had it with Mario Andretti in 1978. But by the early 80s, it was a little tougher for them at that point.
And Colin Chapman, a brilliant designer and engineer, liked to try different things. Very innovative. Sometimes they worked, sometimes they didn't. But when they did work and he got it right, he was really competitive.
Yeah, always trying to stay one step ahead. You know, called the unfair advantage with Penske and Mark Donohue, but obviously Colin Chapman was always looking for an unfair advantage. Field stretching itself out just a little bit of a gap. For a while, we thought we were going to have a good battle between Martin Lauber and Schipper, but so far Schipper seems to be able to maintain it and if only stretch it out. Now the question is whether that number 6 Tyrrell being driven by James Hagan is going to be able to reel him in. Meanwhile, back behind him, we got the battle with number 43 car. That's the that's the 76 March 761. And Chris Bender in the 1983 Arrows A6 and Danny Baker in a 76 McLaren M23.
Baker's getting a lot of track time out here this morning as well. Been in a couple of races earlier.
Of course, 1976, the great year of the great battle between James Hunt and Niki Lauda. Those two going nose to tail throughout the championship year. And of course, Niki Lauda having his horrible accident, out of racing for 6 weeks in that Ferrari, and then somehow managing to get himself back into the cockpit. If you haven't seen the movie Rush, you have to go out and see it because it's such a great way to look at that story. It takes a few liberties. In reality, most of the story is fairly dead on. And then, of course, at the very ending race of the season at Suzuka, when Niki Lauda, it was raining and he decided that the conditions were just such that he didn't want to race, brought the car in, and as a result, James Hunt came away with the championship. So it was quite a year and quite a story to tell.
Yeah, Hunt early on in his career wrecked a lot of cars and became known as Hunt the Shunt. Thornton continues to lead easily in his Lotus 91 with the John Player livery. I think that's an ex-Elio De Angelis car.
Yeah, it is indeed. And the car that's right behind it, we're watching two cars right now. We've got a Williams, and it's being followed by an LEC, which was a very interesting team that came out of the UK. It was actually based in Sussex. They only participated in 10 races, and they were actually using a March. So it's really based on the March, but they called it an LEC, the LEC CRP1. Well, I guess that was based on the March, and they raced that back in 1977.
Still no change in that three-way battle behind Thornton. Shepard still running in second in his 33 Tyrrell, and about half a second behind him is Lauber in his number 9 March. Then another 7/10 of a second behind Lauber is Hagan in his Tyrrell, car number 6. Those cars still running very, very close together, less than a second separating second from third and third from fourth.
Yeah, Lauber just can't seem to figure out how to get an advantage, though, on that Tyrrell. That's the problem. That March is within shooting distance, but not enough to be able to reel him in. And it's sort of the same story for the Tyrrell behind, just a little bit further back, a little bit bigger gap. But close enough he can see the gearbox. He wants to figure out a way to squeeze in, especially when they're going around that Andretti hairpin. They get a little bit closer and pack themselves up.
but as they begin to accelerate away, the gap stretches out, and there's just not enough there. Now we see apparently Martin Lauber's working that car because he just let the tail end kick out just a little bit coming out of there, and now he's trying to figure out how to try to catch up to that Tyrrell just ahead.
Trying to get closer, but at the same time, he can't afford to make a mistake because Hagen is right behind him and will certainly take advantage of any miscue on his part.
And there the battle we see is for 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th as they go up the hill. 5th, 6th, 7th. That car right there, the number 29 car being driven by Chris Bender. The number 43 car being driven by Steve Romack. The number 30 car being driven by Danny Baker. Danny Baker looks like he's trying to line up and trying to squeeze something off, but he can't quite do it. But he's got to worry because he's got a car right behind him as well, trying to take advantage of any mistakes he might make.
Yeah, the car behind Baker, I believe, is Hartley in the 3182 Arrows A4.
So once again, Chris Bender in that 1983 Arrows, being followed by Danny Baker in the 1976 McLaren. And then the number 31, as you mentioned, Steve Hartley in the 82 Arrows. So totally different eras here in terms of what the cars are designed to do and what they can do. But because they all share that Cosworth DFV engine, they're all out there competing on a similar level. Now just look at the design, the styling there of that 1976 McLaren versus the two cars both ahead and behind, because they are so totally different in terms of a very flat style, massive nose, big wings sticking out the front. And there you see the number 1 car getting underneath. That's Eric Joyner, who's working his way up from the back of the pack. He's done a great job. Remember, he started at the very back of this pack and is now working his way through. So he has now moved his way into the 7th position. And now it looks like he's going to take 6th as he's going side by side with the number 30 car, the number 31 car, Chris Bender up there. And he's passed him as well.
Look how much smaller that rear wing is on the Williams.
And even the McLaren is taking advantage of that. The Baker car gets past the arrows going down out of the corkscrew. Not sure if the Arrows car had a problem, Chris Bender, but he ended up getting passed twice by both those two cars, by both the Williams and the McLaren. Back in the pack, that's number 117 being driven by Herinda De Silva, a 1974 Shadow DN3.
He's followed by Charles Warner in the other Shadow. That's a 79 model, about 5 years newer.
Look at that big air box on the top of that thing, just trying to gulp in the air. But when you look at it from behind, look how narrow it is. You know, it stands up so high. The idea is to get that cool air, get it into the engine, to force feed it into the engine. But boy, just an interesting design, especially when you look at the car just ahead of it and the car behind it again. Back up front, this is our lead pack. And they seem to have squeezed themselves just together just a little bit more as we watch the Lotus is out in front. Then we've got Ethan Schipper in that 1980 Tyrrell. That's the blue car at the front of this pack. He's in 2nd place. Martin Lauber in the 74 March. And then we've got James Hagen in the 1982 Tyrrell. Interesting looking at the speeds. We've got that speed trap at the front. I remember a little bit earlier today we saw the Formula Fords going across, and they were doing about 100 miles an hour. Now we're seeing the cars turning 140, 145 miles an hour.
We had a position change. It looks like Lauber's gotten around Shepard in the infield coming out of turn 2 in the Andretti hairpin. Shepard may have a problem. I think his car has slowed as Hagen has gotten around him as well. So it could be that Shepard has got some sort of mechanical issue as he slowed considerably.
And now we see Romack, the next March, which is back behind him, starting to close in on him as well.
So all of a sudden Shepard, who had been second for the first 8 laps, now has a problem, and He is going to probably pit. We'll have to look and see what happens. That's that number 33, 1980 Tyrrell 10.
The shadows that climbed the hill. Remember, they were doing both Formula One and sports car racing. Originally, they were started off in the United States, but their operations were really run out of Great Britain. They were running for quite some time. Originally, they had an American license, but then they shifted over to having a British racing license. They did ultimately get one victory. UOP Shadow actually won a race. That was the 1977 Austrian Grand Prix, the lone victory for Shadow.
They also competed in the Can-Am.
Had a great looking Can-Am car, absolutely. And there's our leader, Gregory Thornton, in 1982 Lotus 91.5, and he's just kind of been running away with this right now. He's got a lead of a little over 14 seconds. And then it's another 2 seconds back to third place. So he's got a really solid lead. His job here is to make sure he doesn't have any mechanical problems, make sure he doesn't make a mistake, get around the track as smoothly and cleanly as possible so that he can take that checkered flag.
Romac doing a good job in that March of his, the number 43 car. But he's got to keep his eyes peeled on Joyner. Joyner right behind him in that 101.83 Williams FW08C. He started way down at the bottom of the field and has now worked his way up into the top 5.
Yeah, according to this, Joyner actually started at the back of the pack. That was the grid we had, showing him starting at the back of the pack. He's done a great job of working his way through lap after lap.
I think he just got around Romac. He did. He's moved up into 4th spot.
Yeah, he's now in 4th. So the problem is he's about another 4 seconds behind the Hagen car, the Tyrrell car. So the question is, can he reel him in the time they've got left? And I don't think they have a lot of time remaining in this race.
I would guess about 3 or 4 laps. You're going to see more laps in this race because the lap speeds are higher for these cars than they were for some of the other groups that did 10 or 11 laps.
And once again, these are all timed races, 20-minute races, and they ran a 20-minute race yesterday and another 20-minute race today. So the question is, is he 2 seconds a lap faster? If he's 2 seconds a lap faster, he should easily be able to reel him in, and that's what we're about to find out.
2 seconds a lap faster is a big reach.
Well, but he's worked his way through the field pretty quickly. So the question is, how much faster is he than everybody else?
We'll have to check the differential next time by, because right now he is about 1.8 seconds behind Hagen. Let's see what it is the next time they come by. No, I see it as 5.1 actually. So he's about almost 4 seconds back, as you had indicated earlier.
Yeah, so that's a pretty big gap he's got to fill up, and the question is how many laps left does he have to be able to pull that off with? So my first opportunity to see a Formula One race wasn't a real Formula One race. It was what we call the Quester Grand Prix. It was run at Ontario Motor Speedway.
I remember
when the
that.
Formula One cars came over and had a race with Formula One cars and Formula 5000 cars. And the idea was it was billed as the Americans versus the Europeans and who would win. And I tell you what, the Formula One cars completely outclassed the Formula 5000 cars. They were just better race cars, the bottom line. But there was one of the Formula 5000 cars that could compete. And of course, it was the Mark Donohue car prepared by Roger Penske and his team. And it did so well, it was in 3rd place, except that their goal had been to make the car look so good, everything that wasn't painted was chromed, and eventually a little fleck of chrome got into a fuel line, and that's what put Mark Donohue out. The one car, the one Formula 5000 car that could compete at the Quester Grand Prix, couldn't quite pull it off. So once again, it was billed as the Americans versus the Europeans, Formula One versus Formula 5000. Who won the race? Mario Andretti. Was he an American? Was he a European?
Both.
He had the best of both worlds, driving a Ferrari that
I
day.
think Joyner has really closed the gap, and somebody loses an engine big time.
That's
That's
the
a number car, Lauber, second place car.
Oh, man.
Motor gone, goes off the outside of the Andretti hairpin and runs it into the gravel. That's going to move Joyner, I believe, up into second spot because he's just gotten around Hagen. So we answered the question about how many seconds a lap can he do? Yeah, he did it.
He absolutely was able to pull it off. So Eric Joyner, who started from the back of the pack, has done a great job going up through this. Now, it's a massive jump to go from where he's at now. There's about a 24-second distance between Joyner and Thornton. So I don't think we have nearly enough time to pull that off unless Thornton decides to slow down just to let him catch up for the fun of it.
No, that's not going to happen.
And we got a checkered flag.
Yeah,
yes, we do. Gregory Thornton in a 1982 Lotus 91.5 is going to take the victory here in Group 4A, 1966 to 1985 Masters historic Formula One cars.
Somebody spun over on the Andretti hairpin on the inside there. I think, is that Thornton?
You know, I don't think so. For a moment, I thought it was. It looked the same, but I think it might not be. At least I'm hoping it's not. We'll have to get a better look at what car is spun out there.
No,
we got another car that's had a problem as well.
May have been contact.
Suddenly at the very end of the race, everybody's littered all over the place down there.
After they took the checkered flag. No, it's not Thornton. He's driving. He's waving to the crowd. He's happy in his victory, waving to everybody.
You know, you look at that John Player special and you realize, you know, that was the era when advertising in the late 70s really came of age in Formula One. You know, there were a lot of restrictions on it in the early going. They weren't allowed to have advertisements. And then initially, well, they began to allow it with one. Part of the problem was a lot of the manufacturers that had supported Formula One racing were beginning to pull back. And Formula One realized they needed to go elsewhere for advertising, for financing, and as a result, they began to allow everything else in. Cigarettes became the big sponsor, the John Player Special, Red Leaf, all those cars were able to come in, and those are the way we remember the names of those cars to this day. The Gold Leaf Special, the John Player Special. That might be Chris Locke in a Lotus 77, that 1976 Lotus 77, that's sitting sideways just before the Andretti hairpin. All right, let's take a look back at the highlights of this Formula One race from this morning. As we mentioned, Gregory Thornton took the lead from the beginning. Boy, he just did a great job. But this was the race of the day. Eric Joyner just worked his way from the back of the pack, continually passing car after car. And then, of course, the number 9 car, that was a great drive by Martin Lauber. He did a great job as he was working his way through the field right up to this moment, the last lap, when unfortunately the engine expired and he had to go off. Then at the end of the race, well, Gregory Thornton was able to finally pull it off and get the victory in that 1982 Lotus 91.5. They're showing him 2 minutes down on the front straightaway, so 2 minutes from now we'll get the sports racers that'll be going out there. And interestingly enough, you think of the sports racers under 2 liters as kind of the Formula Ford of the fendered world in many ways. There were so many manufacturers that were building these cars, Lola, Chevron, Sauber, all kinds, March, and these cars really were a great way to go racing with a little more bodywork around you than you had with the Formula Fords.
These cars are fast, and it looks like it's predominantly a Chevron group here this weekend for the group.
All right, well, they're heading out on the track now, so let's give you our starting grid for Group 5B, the 2-liter sports racers. These are cars built through 1984. Leading the way is Cal Meeker. He's in a 1973 Lola T294. He's out of Pitt Meadows, Canada.
And guess who's next? Patrick Long, familiar name. He's driving car number 26, 74 Chevron B26. Eric Joyner alongside in the 77 Chevron B36.
Jim Bozaglau from Van Nuys, California, 1973 T294. Danny Baker out of San Francisco, California, 1974 Chevron B36.
Dave Perkins, Park City, Utah, a 1980 Lucchini S280. Jim Davenport Alamo, California, car 28, 76 Chevron B36.
David Alvarado out of Orinda, California, in the 1972 Chevron B21. And beside him, Martin Lauber out of Brazil in a 1969 Chevron B16.
Back to row 6, car 19, Chris Port, Milpitas, California, 71 Chevron B19 alongside in a 76 Chevron B36 from Free Union, Virginia, Graham Edelman, car 34.
From Delray Beach, Florida, Mark Colbert in the 1979 Lola T297. Alex McAllister out of Indianapolis in a 1971 Chevron B19.
Brian Groza, Bend, Oregon, 75 Sauber C4, 72 Chevron B21 driven by Alan Friedman.
Bill Coulis from Carmel is in a 69 Chevron B16. Gregory out of Houston is in a 1970 Chevron B16 as well.
Bob Gett, 71 Chevron B19. Ralph Kuchenhofer in a 71 Chevron B19.
Joe Kaleha out of Melbourne, Australia is in a 73 March 73S. David Putz out of Pewaukee, Wisconsin, 1972 Chevron B21.
12th and final row, Kent Morgan from Monrovia, California, 70 Chevron B16 alongside Michael Miller, Atherton, California, 71 Chevron B19. Well, that's your starting field.
There's 24 cars out there, and I think 16 of them are the cars that are part of are from Chevron. So Chevron is definitely making up the grid here.
Pace car leads the field down through the corkscrew now. Still pretty much single file. They'll start to go side by side as they come down into turn 10 out of turn 8 and 9. Doubling up now. Lights are out on the pace car.
And while most of these are open cockpit, we do have a few closed cockpit cars, so it's got a nice look to the field in terms of kind of a classic 1960s, 1970s racing style, especially 1970s, more angular look to these cars.
Pace car takes the exit, and it's going to be all up to Cal Meeker and John Hill in a pair of Lolas. It's interesting with all the Chevrons that are entered in this, it's a pair of Lolas that are on the front row.
And those Lolas will bring them down. They go underneath the flag stand. They'll get the green flag, and out on the outside, that's John Hill. He jumps out to what looks like a quick lead. The question is, can he hang on to it? They're three abreast going into the Andretti hairpin. John Hill has the lead. He takes it inside. Patrick Long, I believe, was on the outside trying to take advantage in the number 26 car. He's trying to move on. He goes off into the dirt. Beside him is the number 6 car. That is the car being driven by Danny Baker, who's made a big move early in this race.
And Patrick Long already up into second spot. He made that pass coming out of the Andretti hairpin. Couple of cars locked up their brakes going into one. You saw the puffs of smoke from the tires of those cars, but right now it looks like Cal Meeker is starting to break away clean, and Patrick Long up in the second spot. I believe that's not John Hill behind him.
That's Danny
Baker in number 6 as he's moved up from 6th into 3rd, so he's charging hard as well. Those top 3 cars going up the hill, up the Ray Hall straight to the top to begin their descent through the corkscrew.
Yeah, Danny Baker did a good job in that very first turn, squeezing in there. Now he's trying to figure out a line on Patrick Long as they go down to the corkscrew. Patrick Long not quite able to squeeze up to the leader, Cal Meeker in that Lola T294. The field's starting to spread out just a little bit. We're going to see who has the ability to do some battles here. I love the paint job on that number 6 car, that Chevron B23. A little reminiscent with the number 6 and the styling on that of the Can-Am car that Mark Donohue used to drive. That number 7 car, that's being driven by John Bouzaglau out of Van Nuys. That's a 1973 Lola T294. They've just completed their first lap. They're going down into the Andretti hairpin. It's John Hill, Patrick Long, Danny Baker at 1, 2, and 3.
Long took a little bit of a defensive line. He stayed inside, forcing Baker to go outside and closing the door. And now looks like Long making a move on your leader, Cal Meeker, has made the pass as they come out of turn 3 and go under the Michelin tire bridge now through turn 4. John Hill dropped the second spot. Danny Baker looking, he would like to move up 1-2. Patrick Long made that pass coming out of the Andretti hairpin and is now leading the field through turn 5 up the hill.
So Patrick Long, who just won the race in the Porsche, now is looking at potentially winning a second race in the 2-liter sports racers.
Now that he's made the pass, he seems to be opening up a bit of a gap over the second place car of Meeker as they head up, not Meeker, rather, of John Hill.
Right. And we've got Baker, who is in that number 6 car, took a look on the inside of John Hill as they were going at the top of the corkscrew, but just didn't have enough to be able to take a position. So I think he's going to try and get as close as he can. He seems to be able to eat him up in some of the windier parts. The question is, as we watch him go up that front straightaway, what does he have in terms of pure horsepower? He's right behind him coming out 11, but swings a lot wider and eats up a lot more track as they come up through the turn number 11 and head out onto the front straightaway.
So Patrick Long in control, starting to open up a bit of a gap now. He's got over a second in hand over the second place car of Hill. And Hill's car must have been raced in France. It's got that blue French color. And Gitan, the cigarette sponsor from France, is on the car.
Unlike so many of the other historic race cars that we'll see during the course of the weekend, a lot of these cars don't necessarily have an original paint scheme that they're famous for. So as a result, you kind of take whatever you want. You know, if you want to make it look like a Ligier with the Gitan paint scheme, you could do that.
Well, some of them, I think, also has the sponsorship that they had when they originally raced, and the same graphics and same numbers. A lot of the drivers like to keep the same numbers and graphics that the car had when it was an active competitor, when it was new, and bring it that way to the track here at the Rolex Monterey Motorsports reunion.
I love the look of this one. This is number 86, being driven by Martin Lauba. That's a 1969 Chevron B16. It's got that great closed cockpit look, being followed by the number 31 car of Mark Colbert. That's a 1979 Lola T297. Bob Coulis in a 1969 Chevron B16. That's number 23 car. He's under attack by number 28, trying to figure out how to squeeze by, but can't quite do it as they come around that last turn going on to the front straightaway. And that number 28 being driven by Jim Davenport out of Alamo, California. That's a Chevron B36. And of course, Chevron was originally started by a guy named Derek Bennett. He was out of England and came up. He was pretty much self-taught as both an engineer and a mechanic, and he was actually a pretty good racing driver in his day. He was a big fan of building model aircraft when he was a kid, and I think those skills helped him when he started to get graduated to building, maintaining cars. He actually had a driving school for cars, and that helped him both get him some seat time, and then also I think he learned a lot about how to build cars. And he started building this one particular car. It was a Clubman, and he did well with it, and everybody else started to say, hey, wait a minute, can you build me one of those? And that's really how Chevron cars started to take off. He was successful in his own car, and the next thing you know, everybody said, well, can I have one too?
Make one for me.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, there you see the number 6 car, Danny Baker, coming out of that turn, swings wide, loses the tail, manages to gather it back up. But as that's happening, Cal Meeker Lola comes up a little bit closer as they come onto that front straightaway.
Yeah, Meeker saw an opportunity there, but he just wasn't able to take advantage of it because he wasn't close enough when Baker made the mistake. But he figured, well, maybe he'll do it again, and this time I'll jump on it and take that opportunity to move up a spot.
So once again, this is the 3rd and 4th place cars. The number 6 Danny Baker car being driven, it's a Chevron B23, and Cal Meeker in the Lola T294. There you see it right there, the red, white, and blue paint scheme. Trying to figure out if he can get close enough, and he's closing in. The question is, will he be able to close a little bit closer as they go up the hill and have the ability to do anything going to the corkscrew? I think he's close, but I don't think he's close enough. There, he moves to the inside. He's taking a look, and yes, he's got it. He takes the 3rd position away from Danny Baker as they go along the Ray Hall Straight, getting ready to go down the corkscrew.
Nice clean pass. Now let's see if he can open up a gap. Baker's not going to be happy with that. Notice both of those cars are right-hand drive cars. So I think most of the Chevrons are. We'll look at the rest of them. Nice enclosed body work on that 115 of Cal Meeker. Looks like a hard tonneau cover over the left side of the car. Pretty much encloses the driver aerodynamically. That's pretty clean. Nice kind of a bat wing hanging out the back, keeping downforce on the rear end of the car. Yeah, he is pulling away now that he has gotten around Danny Baker. But it's still long, comfortably out front with about a second and a half over Hill, who's running in the second spot. And they have kind of checked out. They're another 4 seconds ahead of that battle between Meeker and Baker that has been going on for third and fourth. Jim Buziglu now starting to move into the picture in the number 7 car. He's only about a second behind Baker, so Baker's going to have to start watching his mirrors.
It's interesting looking at the design work. You know, yesterday we had the chance to see Mika Hakkinen driving a McLaren M8D that they used to call the Batmobile because of that big wing and those fin, the tail that came out the back. And you can obviously see these were designed in the same vein. They had the same basic look with that long spoiler across the back with those 2 fins coming up the side. Same Batmobile kind of styling and Batmobile aerodynamics that they were using back then.
Yeah, the end plates of the wings come up out of the bodywork, out of the fenders, rather than using a single strut in the center. It's a much cleaner and smoother looking design. Looks like Hill is closing up on Long a little bit.
I was about to say, because going into this lap, it was about a second and a half lead when they started. They're just about to go across the timing line now, and it looks like it's close probably, well, let's see, it's a little bit closer. Yeah, in fact, it's about a full second closer, so he's only about half a second behind. He tries a different line going into that hairpin turn, because at some point what you have to do is you have to say, okay, if that's what he's doing, how can I do it differently? Now, you still have to work for what the fast line is, but you want to take a different line that might give you an advantage coming out of the turn, maybe give you a little more exit speed than you might have had on the last lap. And right now he's getting a lesson. He follows Patrick Long around. He's looking to the inside, moves to the inside just a little bit, but doesn't have enough coming up. Now let's see as they go up the hill. As he set him up, can he move to the inside? He does. They are side by side.
He makes the pass.
That's right. John Hill makes the pass on Patrick Long as they come along towards the Ray Hall Straight. They'll be heading to the corkscrew, and Patrick Long, boy, suddenly is just that fast. Not only has he passed, but he has to give up quite a few car lengths.
Yeah, we're not seeing lap times on our monitor, so we're not sure if Long has slowed, if he has a problem or what.
Yes, he does, because there you just saw the number 115 of Cal Meeker go by as well. Well, that's unfortunate. Patrick Long won the last race, but a race earlier today, he had a mechanical problem, and it looks like he may have another mechanical problem as he goes around this track. Yeah, he's got his arm in the air. Unfortunately, Patrick Long's day is done because he's going to go on to pit lane. So his day is done. And that number 7 car, there you see him start to slide as he goes through turn number 11. That's the Buziglau car that is trying hard to keep up to Baker just ahead of him.
He's catching up to Baker. He was quite a ways back. And I mentioned, I think a lap ago, Baker's going to have to watch his mirrors because Buziglau in that 7 car is definitely closing. He's about a car length and a half behind Baker as they come out of turn 2, go down into turn 3, working through that infield complex. They're under the Michelin tire bridge right now.
So let's reset the field now that Patrick Long has had to drop out. John Hill in the Lola T292, the number 70 car, he has the lead right now. The number 115 car being driven by Cal Meeker, that's a 73 Lola T294, is in second. Danny Baker, the number 6 car in the 1974 Chevron B23, is third. And Jim Buziglau in the number 7 car, that 1973 Lola T294, is in fourth. And that's the way they have the top 4 as we run here. We watch the number 6 car and the number 7 car are having to dice their way through back markers as they begin to lap some of the field and have to get through there as quickly and cleanly as possible because, once again, Baker knows that that number 7 car is right behind him.
Yeah, Buziglau started in 5th spot. Danny Baker started 6th. Baker now running 3rd as he's picked up 3 spot. And Buziglau is 1 ahead of where he started, but he's looking to move himself into the top 3 if he can only get by Danny Baker.
Yeah,
not an easy thing to do.
I think the problem that happened in the top 5 is that Eric Joyner, who started 4th, had a problem early on. He's now shown in 23rd, so he's essentially out of this race. I think he wasn't even able to finish the first lap. So we're in a situation where now we have 19 cars that are still left in the race. Of those, well, let's say 8 or 10 of them are on the lead lap.
Yeah, Patrick Long's retirement moved everybody up 1 spot too. Hill with a comfortable lead now, 4 seconds. Then it's another 7 seconds back to that battle for 3rd between Baker and Buziglu, and they're only about a half a second apart.
Here's the battle for 5th. Bob Coulis in that number 23 1969 Chevron B16. Right behind him, Jim Davenport in a 1976 Chevron B36.
And they're really glued together, less than 0.2 of a second separating those.
Yeah, they're working hard, trying to stay nose to tail, but once again, he just doesn't have enough. Davenport doesn't to be able to take anything. See as they come down out of turn 11 onto the front straight and do the drag race up to the flag stand and then into the Andretti hairpin turn. Just a great look, though, as they come along. I love to watch the cars as they're going through there. But nope, in the drag race, they just kind of maintain their positions. I don't think you could say that Coulis has an advantage, and I don't think you could say that Davenport can gain too much. Davenport does a good job of braking late, getting as close as he can going through the hairpin, but it's just not enough. Now they're almost side by side, and Davenport may stand a chance, but not quite. He wasn't quite side by side enough to be able to take the position away.
He may try and do it in turn 5. Those 2 cars are just the example of the 2 types of wing I was talking about. The 23 car has that single strut from the center that holds up the big wing, while the 28 car has got the fins coming up from the fenders, more of a bat wing.
Davenport was almost side by side. He looked in, just wasn't able to get quite close enough. But as you can see, going up the Rahal straight, coming towards a corkscrew, he's close. He's going to try to take a look to the inside, but I think he doesn't want to do it at the corkscrew. I think there's other places on the track he wants to pull it off. And there is your leader. That is the car that's being driven by John Hill, the blue Ligier car, Jeton car, I should say, right there. That's being driven by John Hill, a Lola T294 that is leading this race and leading it comfortably at this point. I know he had almost a 4-second lead, and it's down to about 3.5 seconds, but I think that's more a function of traffic than anything else at this point.
Cal Meeker running second in that 1:15.73 Lola T294. It's a pair of Lolas at the front, Hill and a Lola as well. Then it's Danny Baker in his Chevron, car number 6, running in the 3rd spot, being pursued by Jim Buziglu in the Lola T294, and Bob Cullis, and a great battle for 5th with Jim Davenport. Cullis in 23, Davenport in 28. Are a pair of Chevrons.
And on the last lap, Jim Davenport did a good job of getting right up beside or close to the number 23 car, the 1969 Chevron B16 of Bob Cullis. But this lap, he wasn't able to get as close. So now we see the race. This is for 3rd, number 6, Danny Baker at the front of that pack. Right now, he's got Jim Buziglu, the 1973 Lola T294, the number 7 car, closing in, but not close enough to be able to take a stab to do anything to get underneath the number 6 car.
He gets close, but not close enough to make a move and attempt at overtaking. But that's a good battle going on between those 2 cars. They're probably about a half a second apart. Comfortably in the lead is Hill in that 7-0 car. He's coming up on some traffic now as he gets into the Andretti hairpin. He'll probably catch them over by the Mother's Bridge going into turn 5.
Yeah, he built up once again, he had a 3.5 second lead on the last lap. He's built it up to just over 4. So he's going quickly, but as you said, he's got traffic ahead of him that he has to contend with.
A couple of those closed-bodied Chevrons. There's that battle for 3rd between Baker in 6 and Buziglu in 7.
Now, Buzoglu is close, but he's not close enough to really take a stab at trying to pass. He can't quite get inside the turn. Looked like we had something going on right behind them, though, in terms of a battle on the track. So there's 2 cars behind him. I think he was trying to see if he could look at a slightly different line inside coming up there, but once again, it's just not close enough to take a pass.
We're probably down to the last couple of laps. They might get a 1-lap sign this time by, or it could be 2 to go. We'll have to wait and see when they get back around start finish.
Cal Baker uses all the track as he comes around 5 heading up into 6. And there's the leader of the race, John Hill, in that number 70 car, the Lola T292. It's a whole field of chevrons, and yet it's a pair of Lolas that are in first and second. And they are giving them 1 lap to go. 1 lap. This is the final lap. And John Hill, as long as he stays out of trouble, looks like he should be able to pretty safely and pretty easily win this race. Remember, he had a great dicing battle with Patrick Long early on, but when Patrick Long had his mechanical problems, well, John Hill was able to move ahead. So it's a pair of Lolas. Once again, we had 16 chevrons entered, but it's a pair of Lolas that are leading the race. And this is that battle right now that's going on for 3rd and 4th. We've got Danny Baker in the chevron, Jim Bozoglau in the Lola. Jim not quite able, the Lola, to get close enough to be able to take the position away.
Bit of a battle between Davenport and Coulis in 28 and 23, but they're on their final lap as well. But it looks like it's going to be John Hill comfortably winning this one.
Yeah, Davenport and Coulis had a great battle going along, and eventually Davenport was able to take the 5th spot away from Coulis. So congratulations to Davenport. Now the question is, can he hold on? He's got about a 2-second lead over Coulis going into this last lap. And there's our leader. That's John Hill coming down the hill from the corkscrew, heading through turn 11, heading onto the front straightaway. He's going to get a checkered flag as he comes across the line. And the winner of the Group 5B 2-liter sports racers through 1984 is John Hill. He had about a 4-second lead over second place. Cal Meeker in the 1973 Lola T294 means it's a Lola 1-2. Danny Baker in that 1974 Chevron there, the number 6 car, just took the checkered flag. And Jim Bozoglau in the 1973 Lola T294, the number 7 car, comes across the finish line, and he's in 4th place.
Yeah, Baker broke up the Lola party. Lola's finishing 1, 2, and 4. Then it's Davenport in car number 28, finishes 5th in his Chevron, followed by Bob Cullis, number 23, 6th in a Chevron. Mark Colbert, 31, a Lola T297. Graham Edelman, car number 34, finishes 8th. These are all chevrons. Martin Lauber, 9th in the 86 Chevron, and 10th, David Alvarado in the number 8A Chevron.
John Hill taking the victory lap, waving at the crowd as he drives around. Cal Meeker in that 1973 Lola T294 right behind. Let's go back to the start of the race. This is what it looked like. Initially, John Hill jumped out to a quick lead, but then Patrick Long in the number 26 was able to figure out how to get by. And as a result, he took the lead and held on to it for quite some time. This is what it looked like as they were going up the hill. They had battles all through the race. And this was Danny Baker as he got passed for second place by Cal Meeker. Cal Meeker in the Lola, Danny Baker in the Chevron. And then there was a problem with Patrick Long. He puts his hand in the air, and as a result, he apparently was done for the day, had to pull into pit lane, and for the second time out of 3 races today, he's had mechanical difficulties. But when it was all over, well, it was this guy right here, John Hill, in a 1972 Lola T292, winning the race and coming away the champion for the morning race here at Rolex Monterey Motorsports Reunion, the WeatherTech Raceway here at Laguna Seca.
2-minute warning being given down on pre-grid. Won't be too much longer before those cars fire up and start to come out of their pre-grid staging area onto the pit lane and head out for their sighting lap. Expect 32 cars for this one, Group 6B, 1981 to 1991 IMSA GTO and GTU cars.
A great era for IMSA. We've got everything from those 1991 Nissan, the 1991 Mazda. We've got Camaros, Roush Capris, Firebirds. We've got Olds Cutlass. We've got Corvettes. We've got 240Zs alongside 300Zs. We've got Camaros. We've got BMWs. We've got the Chevy Beretta down there, the Buick Somerset, Pontiac Trans Am. A great collection of cars that are going to be out there, a great part of IMSA racing history.
This is another version of the Trans Am series, actually a little later on. As you can see, these cars from 81 to 1991, the heyday of the Trans Am was 67 to 72, and that was an SCCA sanctioned event. And IMSA kind of brought this back, and it was very, very popular as the cars start to move out onto the track.
So let's give you the rundown of the cars that are going to be racing in this Group 6B 1981 to 1991 IMSA GTOs and GTUs. Craig Bennett out of Milford, Michigan, is in a 1991 Nissan 300ZX. Beside him is Joel Miller in a 1991 Mazda RX-7.
Bill Ackerland up next, Holland, Michigan. 91 Chevrolet Camaro, 1985 Roush Mercury Capri, Ken Davis.
Ken Epsman out of Santa Clara in a 1984 Pontiac Firebird. John McKenna out of Auburn, Washington in a 1985 Mercury Capri.
Rick Jeffrey in a 1986 Chevrolet Camaro. Another 86 Chevrolet Camaro right alongside. That's George Crass.
Steve Schuler is in a 1986 Ford Roush Mustang. Gordon Johnson out of Scottsdale is in a 1991 Olds Cutlass.
Next up, a 1988 Chevrolet Corvette driven by Michael Malone. Walt Brown Jr. shares the row in an 87 Chevrolet Camaro.
How's this for a famous IMSA name? Tommy Kendall in a 1982 Mazda RX-7. Michael Parsons in a 1990 Nissan 300ZX.
John Murray drives a 1989 Nissan 240SX, a 1989 IMSA 240SX. Alongside that one's driven by Philip Mendelowitz.
Steve Link out of Laguna Beach is in an 83 Camaro. Steve Walker in a BMW M3 from 1987.
Nick Davidas driving a 1988 Chevrolet Beretta, an Olds Cutlass alongside 1990 model driven by Howard Matloff.
David Doyle is in an 82 Pontiac Trans Am. Mike McNamee in a 1985 Buick Somerset.
Bob Hardison driving a 1990 Oldsmobile, 1983 Chevrolet D'Atley Camaro alongside driven by Carrie Eisenlohr.
Ross Myers in an 88 Ford Roush Mercure. Jonathan Ornstein in a 1990 Olds Cutlass.
Toyota Celica GTO 1986 model, Eric Edenholm driving, Michael Hamig in a 1988 Chevrolet Corvette.
Sean Coleman in a Chevy Camaro from 1983. Zach Brown in an 88 Audi 2000.
Final row, Jeff Francis, 1983 Buick Regal. Chris Liebenberg completes the field in a 1991 Ford Mustang. That's your starting field for Group 6B, 1981 to 1991 IMSA GTO and GTU cars.
Yesterday we saw great battles in the vintage Trans Am racing, and I have a feeling the battles are going to be just as good in this one. They're going to go wheel to wheel, fender to fender. Once again, the goal is not to have contact. This is vintage racing, but still, these guys are very competitive. The cars look great. They've got a lot of great performance, and it's great to see the Nissan Mazda battle up front, just like it was happening back in its day.
Yeah, great selection of cars. The Chevrolet Beretta, the Mercury Capris that were put out by Roush Ford, Roush Mustangs. A little bit of everything out there. Buicks, Oldsmobiles, Pontiacs, a lot of GM representation. Corvettes as well, of course, and the Camaros.
So once again, it's Mazda and Nissan on the front row. Then in the second row, it's an American second row. Well, we've got the Camaro, and then we've also got the Mercury Capri in the second row. So it's Japanese manufacturers, row number one. Row number two is American manufacturers. That number 33 car, the Scott Sharp-looking car, Duracell sponsor, which I believe is the original paint on this. I think he's kept it in its original form, and his theory is, well, when I finally have to repaint it, I will, but until then, it doesn't look too bad. We're going to keep driving it. That one's being driven by Bill Aukerland. So they're coming down. Lights are off of the pace car. The pace car has exited the track. Now they're coming on the front straightaway. The job of the pole is to Craig Bennett is to keep them all lined up as he goes across the stripe. We're going to get a green flag. Yes, we do. Green flag, and we are racing in Group 6B
with the IMSA GTOs, GTUs, and the Nissan takes the lead immediately, jumping ahead. But the Mazda trying to take it on the outside, and that's exactly, he's going to be able to pull it off. And in fact, the Camaro and the Mercure is trying, or I should say the Capri is trying to take the position as well, and he does just that.
Wow, big change already in the first turn as the leader dropped 2 spots. He went from the pole to third. Craig Bennett in that Nissan 300ZX being passed by Joel Miller in that Mazda RX-7 number 62, and Bill Ockerlund in the Chevrolet Camaro 32.
So we got a Mazda, we got a Capri, we got a Nissan, then we got a Camaro. That's the 1, 2, 3, 4 going into this first lap as they come up the hill and start heading for the corkscrew. And there we've got the number 8 car. That's the car that's being, the 18 car that's being driven by Kenneth Davis. Looked like he was trying to take a look on the inside. He's got some power coming up the hill, trying to figure out if he can get a move on that Mazda up front.
Yeah, you see the flame coming out of the side of the exhaust on the Mazda on the right-hand side, unburned fuel. When he backs off, gets off the accelerator to enter the corkscrew and head on down the hill.
Bill Ockerlund in the Camaro, the Duracell colors, flying down the hill. Now his job is to see if he can kind of reel in these first 2. He doesn't want to let them get away. And boy, I tell you what, Craig Bennett just got gobbled up on that first lap. And there you see the number 7 car. That's John McKenna, Mercury Capri as well. Remember back in those days, they had the Capri that they were driving. And so as a result, that was an IMSA car. You see it was very similar to the Mustang in its day.
Yeah, similar bodywork, almost like Ford and Mercury with the Taurus and the Sable. Same car underneath, just a different body shell covering the works. But Miller looks pretty comfortable out there in that 1991 Mazda RX-7.
Yeah, Joel Miller, he did get a tire off coming out of the Andretti hairpin, but he gobbled it back in very well and didn't have a problem with it. Now the biggest problem for Kenneth Davis in that Roush Mercury is he's got to figure out how to find a way to kind of catch up. I thought he had a little more horsepower. He was going to be able to pull him coming up the hill, but that Mazda has absolutely pulled away, which is interesting because, you know, back in 1991, the Mazda was doing very well, so it's very appropriate. The 1991 Mazda would be doing well again.
And Ockerlund in that Chevy in car 33 in third spot has got his eyes on Davis in the Capri. Back in the 4th spot, it is Bennett, who is in the number 76 car. He started from the pole in that Nissan 300ZX. Now in 4th, McKenna completes the top 5 in the number 7 Mercury Capri IMSA.
Then we got a couple of Camaros. One being driven by George Crass. That's an 86 Camaro. And Rick Jeffrey also in an 86 Camaro. And he's driving back there as well. And it looks like the Oldsmobile Cutlass being driven by Gordon Johnson out of Scottsdale is already squeezed in between those 2 Camaros. There you see the number 8 car. That's being driven by Rick Jeffrey. And we've got the other Oldsmobile that is squeezed in between. So there's some great racing going on early on in this GTO GTU race. Up front is Joel Miller and Kenneth Davis, but in the back of the pack, this Oldsmobile has managed to squeeze in between the 2 Camaros. Looking a little bit further back, oh, there we got a Mazda RX-7 coming around. We got a Nissan 300ZX, that's the number 75 car, being driven by Michael Parsons. But that number 75 car, that's the car driven by Tommy Kendall. Remember, Tommy Kendall made his name in IMSA initially by driving in the GTU series before he moved up and ultimately ended up in the prototypes. But this was the car that he made his name in driving. Look at that massive muffler hanging out the back.
Yeah, those RX-7s were very loud, rotary engine cars. A lot of horsepower, very successful.
It was always interesting. Tommy Kendall, not a small guy, and he did a great job of always fitting into the small cars. You know, in fact, that was really the thing I think that limited his open wheel racing career. He kept him in sports cars, kept him in some stock cars and everything else, just because he was not a small guy. And his ability to get into what were the smaller formula cars of the day was a little bit more difficult. He won IMSA GT championships. He won SCCA championships. You know, he's driving a Mazda RX-7 in the GTU. And I remember he was doing that while he was in college at the time. So he was still driving and in college at the same time.
Almost tall enough to play in the NBA, actually.
In fact, I seem to remember being at an IMSA race a number of years ago with Tommy Kendall, and we had to present him with his college diploma because it was a race weekend, and he graduated, and he wasn't there for his graduation.
Miller with a comfortable lead in that RX-7, about 2.2 seconds over Davis in the Roush Mercury Capri. Another second back to Auckland in that number 33 Chevrolet Camaro. And it's Bennett in the 76 car. That's the Nissan 300 ZX that started from the pole. Fifth spot now is McKenna, that number 7 Mercury Capri.
Now this is the battle we're looking at the back of the pack. That number 88 car is currently in ninth, but he's working hard trying to catch up to the Olds and the Camaro that are just ahead of him. Walt Brown out of Scottsdale is in the 87 Camaro, then John Murray, then Michael Parsons, and Tommy Kendall at the back of that pack. And it's a very competitive pack. They're really just covered by a couple of seconds as they work their way around. And it's great seeing all the 7-Eleven colors, the Skull Bandit colors. So great to see the same paint schemes back out here racing again. As we were joking yesterday, who would have thought that when these companies were making the investment in their cars, like for example 7-Eleven, here they are years, decades later, still getting some play out of that sponsorship because everybody wants to see it in its original colors.
It's a long-lasting benefit that they certainly didn't anticipate when they signed him. Good battle between that 7-Eleven, I think that's a Capri, I'll have to check on that, and the Skull Bandit Buick.
Yeah, indeed, that's exactly what it is. It's a Mercury Capri being driven by John McKenna, George Crass in that Camaro right behind, and boy, he's close, but he just doesn't seem to have enough to get it. Now let's see, can he have a little more oomph going up the hill? Can he squeeze in on him just a little bit? And so far, he doesn't seem to be able to do that.
Okay, that is a Camaro. I misidentified it as a Buick, so my bad. Having a great race, the two of them. They're just pretty evenly matched. Good races throughout the field as you've got a traffic jam going down into the Andretti hairpin.
Yeah, that's the number 24 car driven by Howard Matloff. That's a 1990 Irv Hare Olds Cutlass. Irv Hare, of course, one of the great IMSA drivers, made his name driving Oldsmobiles, and that's one of the cars that he was racing. That number 24 car right there is the Irv Hare, followed by the number 6 car. That's a 1985 Buick Somerset. So I love the collection of cars because right behind them, as you can see, we've got a, it looks like, is that Buick Somerset and an Oldsmobile and another Oldsmobile behind that. And then we've got a Diatley Camaro. So it's a great collection of American cars. You know, interesting to think that Oldsmobile doesn't even exist anymore. Buick does. When we think about Pontiac is gone, but it's still a great chance to see these great cars that were racing in their day back out on the track.
Mercury Capris are gone as well.
Yeah, exactly. We've even got a Mercour in this race, and Mercours were rare back even in their day.
Yeah, they were sold through Lincoln Mercury dealers, I believe imported from Germany.
Had great performance, just didn't have great sales. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Back up front, it's Joel Miller, and now Bill Aukerland in that 1991 Camaro, the Duracell paint car, has moved into second place, trying to figure out if he can reel in the leader. And Kenneth Davis in that 1985 Mercury Capri is back in third.
Aukerland's driving a lot of cars here this weekend as he's trying to close up on Miller, your race leader. We'll see if that gap is going to shrink this time or not. Last time by it was 1.6 seconds. Now he's taken almost a full second off. Oh, and that Skull Bandit Camaro loops it. Looks like that's up in the corkscrew.
Yeah, just at
the
top.
entrance of the corkscrew.
I was going to say, that's a really dangerous place. Let's see what happened. We mentioned the fact that they were under battle. He decided to try to see if he could take a look to the inside, but he had a little too much speed, had to lock it up, and unfortunately his speed didn't carry him off the track, so he ended up literally sitting in the center of the corkscrew. Can you imagine coming up over the hill, looking at the corkscrew and seeing that car sitting there?
Yeah, well, imagine what it looks like for him. sitting there looking through the windshield of cars coming at him at speed.
All right, now Bill Aukerland is still trying to chase that Mazda. They're going through traffic. I think Aukerland was hoping that maybe the traffic would be a problem for the Mazda, but that's not the case. In fact, that it kind of held him up a little bit more as they're going through some of these back markers. That's the number 31 car that you see right ahead of them, being driven by Jonathan Ornstein. That's a 1990 Oldsmobile Cutlass.
And Aukerland goes by him on the inside just at the entrance of the corkscrew and heads downhill in pursuit of Miller in that Mazda RX-7. Yeah, this has really allowed Miller to open up that gap. It was less than a second last time by. It's probably going to be about 1.5 or more. We'll check that the next time we monitor updates.
Yeah, back markers can give and they can take away. There's Tommy Kendall in the number 75 car. He's still back in 11th place. Just about a second behind the car that's just ahead of him, that's being driven by John Murray. So it's a good battle back there, but he's just not quite close enough to be able to reel him in.
Yeah, that gap between Miller and Aukerland, first and second, now is up to just about 2 seconds, 1.9. So the traffic worked in Miller's advantage this time.
And the 03 car there, you see, he was able to gather it back up and get going again, but he lost quite a few places. He's now back in 13th. He's going to have to see if he can battle his way back up through the track. Actually, now it looks like he's moved up. He was 13th at the start of this lap. I want to say he's 11th because he's passed Tommy Kendall. Get our timing and scoring, and it looks like that's how it'll finally shake out. Joel Miller continues to lead. Bill Aukerland right behind. There the cars going down into the Andretti hairpin. That's the number 29 car. Mike McNamee is in that 1985 Buick Somerset. The number 29 car is being driven by Steve Link. That's a 1983 Camaro. And there we see the 03 car working his way up. George Crass as he tries to continue to work his way through the pack.
Miller has maintained that lead of just about 2 seconds over Aukerland. Miller, your race leader in that number 62 Mazda RX-7, and Aukerland in the number 33 1991 Chevrolet Camaro. And Craig Bennett in third spot. He actually had dropped to fourth, so he moved back up to third in that 76 1991 Nissan 300ZX. Kenneth Davis dropped to fourth in the number 85 Roush Mercury Capri, and John McKenna fifth in the 85 Mercury Capri car number 7.
Mazda's all over the place out there. Mazda very successful for quite some time with the IMSA series. Back when Pete Halsmer was driving these cars. Remember Pete Halsmer, great Mazda driver, did a great job driving these back in the original era of these cars.
Yeah, and he graduated to drive their prototype as well. Miller just reeling off the lap, sorry.
I remember Pete Halsmer, very thinking man. He had those glasses. And he just made him look a little bit smarter, but he really was a thinking man's driver. He was always trying to think out the strategy of the race, and was always one step ahead of everything going on the track.
If you had him in a lineup of people with his appearance, you'd never guess that he was a race car driver.
No, exactly.
Looked a little professorial with the glasses, or looked like a student.
So these are battles for position. That number 03, that car, George Crass, who spun just past the number 29 car of Steve Link. And it looks like he's got another the Mercury Capri in tow. So all those cars are going up the hill together. That's the number 11 car of Ross Myers. So George Crass and Ross Myers are just doing their darndest to kind of work their way through the field. Now it looks like the 03 car being driven by Crass went a little bit wide as a result. That Ross Myers Mercury,
that's a Mercure.
Mercure, that is the Mercure, came up and went underneath him. And now he's got the lead going in. And now you see the number 29 car taking a move on the 03 car as well. I wonder if the 03 car is having a problem.
We'll have to watch as they come through.
They got a drag race coming up. It's possible he simply made a mistake coming out of the hairpin, and as a result, or the corkscrew, and as a result, the Mercure was able to take the position, and it looked like it gave it an opportunity for the number 29 car to get in there, but he hasn't been able to do it. Now, can the 03 car, that Camaro, come back in and see if he can use his horsepower to take the advantage away from the Mercure? Once again, this is the battle for 11th and 12th. 10th is Ross Myers in that Mercure. 11th is Crass in the Camaro. Steve Link is in the Camaro right behind him. That's the number 29. And then the next car back that was passed by this pack was Tommy Kendall.
I'm looking at our grid sheet, and Myers, according to this, started 25th or 26th. So he is really charged through.
Yeah, the thing is, we only had 23 cars that actually took the took the green flag. So we have a number of cars that weren't in the mix right off the bat. But still, he was in the back of the pack. Bottom line, he was in the back of the pack, and he's done a great job of moving up. It's the Rolex Monterey Motorsports reunion this weekend here at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. And what a battle we got going on out there with these GTO and GTU cars. The number 62 being driven by Joel Miller. He's got a good solid lead, almost 3 seconds. No one challenging him. As long as he can stay out of trouble, he should be in pretty good shape.
Yeah, he has been dominant. He started on the front row in second spot and got around Craig Bennett to take the lead by the time they got down into the Andretti hairpin, the first corner on the track. We should be getting close to the end of this one. The leaders have completed 11 laps. We'll have to watch the starter to see if he signals to the driver how many more laps there are left to run.
And he's now lapping number 95. That's the 15th place car. So Joel Miller is already lapping the 15th place car as they go through this field. That's the number 24 car right there. That's the 17th place car. That's the pack that's right behind him. 24th, 17th, that's Howard Matloff and the Irv Hare Olds Cutlass. The number 33A, that's 1990 Oldsmobile right behind him. The number 30 of Carl Eisenlohr is a 1983 Chevrolet. It's a Diatley Camaro. And the 31 car by Jonathan Ornstein, a 1990 Oldsmobile Cutlass. That's a pretty tight pack as they move up. We got positions changing on the inside as they pass one of the back markers. And now they're trying to make a move into the Andretti turn. The Andretti hairpin right there. And those are the cars. That's John McKenna, who's actually trying to work his way through this pack, I believe. I think that's what he's trying to do. So John McKenna is actually in 5th place, working his way up through this pack because those guys have all been lapped.
Here comes your race leader up the start-finish straightaway. Yep. Gets the 1 lap sign.
All right, 1 lap to go here at the Group 6B IMSA GTO and GTU cars. Joel Miller, once they had the problem with the Nissan 300ZX, he managed to get him in the first turn. He has led pretty much nonstop. Bill Aukerland in that Chevrolet Camaro right behind. And Craig Bennett, who wasn't able to take advantage of his pole position, ended up now back in 3rd. There it looks like he's coming up. The leader is coming up to do a lap and put Tommy Kendall 1 lap down. Now, back in the day, Tommy Kendall might have been lapped when he was in a GTU car, but I can tell you, Tommy Kendall never likes to get lapped. But he knows when to move out of the way.
Miller heading up the hill for the last time at speed this morning. Aukerland is still in pursuit, but he's a full 2 seconds back. Too much to make up on half a lap. Long way back to Bennett. He's another 17 seconds back, and then Davis and McKenna. That's your top 5 as they complete this final lap. Miller laps 1 more car. That's the number 29 car. He gets around Steve Lincoln, a Chevrolet Camaro.
Well, you see the acceleration when he moved out to the side, just hit the gas and just moved so quickly past that back marker. He just didn't have the same speed. Come around turn 11, go up the front straightaway. They are going to get the checkered flag. And Joel Miller in that 1991 Mazda RX-7 is going to take the victory. Bill Aukerlin in a 1991 Camaro right behind him. Craig Bennett will finish in third. He's driving that 1991 Nissan 300ZX.
Look for Kenneth Davis to finish fourth in that 85 Mercury Capri. Then John McKenna in car 7 should be fifth in 85 Mercury Capri. Chevrolet Camaro Rick Jeffrey, car number 8, should be sixth, followed by Walt Brown at 28. Another Chevrolet Camaro, Michael Parsons in a 1990 Nissan 300ZX Turbo, number 75, 8th. Michael Malone, 9th in 88, the Chevrolet Corvette, and Ross Myers in the number 11, 88 Ford Roush Mercour, who started at the back of the pack, finishes in 10th.
Tommy Kendall, we saw him a number of times during the course of this race. Started 13th and finished 13th, so no big change for him, but he had to deal with a lot of the cars that were coming around him. And for a while he was in a battle in the pack he was in, but I think as things stretched out, it just didn't come his way in terms of being able to compete with anybody, and more importantly, to be able to pass anybody. Car still getting the checkered flag on that front straightaway. Joel Miller's in the middle of his cool down lap, but everybody else getting the checkered flag up front. Interesting when you look at this, you've got the GTO GTOs and the GTUs. You've got Mazdas in the GTO division and Mazda's RX-7s in the GTU division. So really the same concept of a car done totally differently. All right, this is what it looked like at the start of the race. Remember that Nissan 300ZX? He may have had the pole position, but the Mazda got to him very quickly, and the next thing you know, he had the lead. Everybody else battling for positions in the back of the pack. This was the way it looked as Tommy Kendall got passed by number 75, Michael Parsons. And there were Oldsmobiles or all kinds of things. Then every now and then there was a problem. You can see that Buick moving over and letting everybody know, pass me on the right-hand side. And this was a great battle that was going on. The battle with the 03 car that was battling right here. He just can't quite get underneath. He locks it up and gets stalled right in the center of the corkscrew. That cost him a lot of positions. But then he and the Mercour, well, they started working their way up. George Crass and the Camaro. And the next thing you know, Ross Myers and he were working their way through. Ross Myers eventually finishing 11th, and George Crass, I should say Ross Myers finishing 9th, and George Crass finishing 11th.
This next group, 4B, 1961 to 1966, GT cars under 2.5 liters. Cars leaving the pre-grid area to come out on track now.
All right, let's run down the starting field. We've got 40 cars in this one. Patrick Long, as we talked about on the pole, in a 1968 Porsche 911 TR version. Nelson Calais in a 1967 Porsche 911.
Alan Turpins in a 67 Porsche 911 T/R. Tom Tuttle in a 64 Lotus Elan 26R.
Patrick Byrne in a 1965 Alfa Romeo GTA Corsa, and Gunnar Jeanette in a 1965 Alfa Romeo GTZ.
Alex McDowell in a 67 Nissan Bluebird. Matthew Getzinger in a 65 Porsche 911.
John Wilkins is in a 1967 Datsun Roadster 311, and Kevin C. is in a 1966 Porsche 911.
Randall Smalley's driving a 69 Porsche 911S, 67 Lotus Elan SE, driven by John Baird.
Another Lotus is being driven by Victor Avila. That's a Lotus 26R, and Paul Ryan has a Lotus Super 7.
And more Porsche 911s. This one, a 65, driven by Edward Matsuishi. Paul Friedman in a 66 Porsche 911.
Robert Smalley has a Porsche 911S, and so does Johann Frank Dirks. He's got a Porsche 911X.
David A. Roberts driving a 67 Porsche 911S lightweight. And alongside is a Marcos 1800 GT, driven by Mike Denman.
Eric Wilms is in a 1968 Porsche 911L. Mark Hugo is in a 1967 Porsche 356C.
65 Turner Mark III Special, driven by Carl Kraus. Brandon Adrian in a 67 Alfa Romeo Auto Delta GTA 1600 Corsa.
Mark Platson is in a 1964 Morgan 4+4. Dave Perkins out of Utah is in a 1965 Alfa Romeo Giulia Special.
Ron Carrico drives the 64 Morgan 4.4 Competition Series 5, 66 Datsun Roadster, driven by Ross Merrill.
Don Bell is a 1957 Porsche Speedster. Debbie Briscoe is a 1966 Alfa Romeo GTV.
William Kirkwood, 61 Elba Courier, 65 Alfa Romeo TZ1, driven by Ned Speaker.
Frank Altamira is in a 1966 911S, and another 911S is being driven by Kevin Buckley.
Scott Lovewell, 1959 Porsche 356, Terry Forland, 65 BMW 1800 Ti.
And there's Sharon Edelman in a 1965 Turner Mark III, and Dennis Adair in a 1962 MGB.
Our final roll finds Jerry Peters driving a 67 Fiat Abarth 850 TC/TCR, and Masaaki Omura in a 67 Datsun Fairlady 2000. That's your starting field.
Once again, 40 cars. They're lining up. This is Group B, 1961 through 1966 GT cars. All of these cars are under 2,500 cc's. Remember, yesterday we had a GT group that was both under and over 2,500 cc's, but this one is strictly under 2,500 cc's. And that Patrick Long Porsche, for example, is 2,463 cc's. But you work your way down, and there's an Alfa Romeo GTZ, which has just 1,570 cc's. There's a Morgan 4+4 that's 1,498 cc's. But most of them are in the range, in that 2,000 range. Although I should point out there's a Fiat Abarth at the back of the pack. Jerry Peters is driving it with just 982 cc's.
Lights out on the pace car. They're about ready to go green flag racing. That pace car will take the pit exit, and off he dives out of the way, leaving it to the front row of Patrick Long and Nelson Cali in a pair of Porsches. A 1968 for Long, a 1967 for Cali.
In qualifying, you've got the top three are Porsches, and you've got that Lotus Elan on the outside of the second row. You got an Alfa Romeo in the third row. And Patrick Long taking it nice and slow as they come up to the green flag, very slowly, almost a parade kind of motion. He's going to take it when he gets the opportunity. He crosses that stripe right there, gets the green flag, and they are racing here at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. Now the question is, how can Patrick Long, in this car, unlike the last race, he's got the legs, easily takes it down into the first turn and gets the lead going into the Andretti hairpin. That Lotus Elan trying to take the outside of the Porsche, but can't do it.
No, Lotus Elan actually drops a spot, goes into fourth spot, as it's Porsche's 1, 2, 3 as they go through the Andretti hairpin and start to work their way through the infield. A series of right-hand 90-degree turns, turn 2, turn 3, and 4. Then they go up into turn 5 when they go under the Mother's Bridge. That's a favorite passing spot, that banked left-hander that leads them up the hill to the corkscrew.
And the Alfa Romeo GTA, being driven by Patrick Byrne, is trying to take a look on the inside of that number 11 Lotus Elan, but can't quite pull it off. Now they're side by side as they go up the hill.
That Patrick Byrne Alfa has a significant racing history. We'll try and get the information on it for you. It raced considerably, spent a lot of time racing in Europe and did quite well. But it is long, leading the field up the hill. Look at that Lotus Elan. He's trying to make a move on the number 40 of Alan Turpin's as they go down the corkscrew with that Alfa we talked about right behind him, the Alfa of Patrick Byrne.
And then there's another Alfa right behind that. That's the one being driven by Gunnar Jeanette. That's a 1964 Alfa GTZ. That's the red one. So you got a white number 160 true Alfa GTA, followed by the red 1964 Alfa Romeo GTZ. And everybody's trying to figure out a line coming into that final turn as we've got the Lotus trying to take a move on the Porsche. The GTZ of Gunnar Jeanette hanging the tail out. And everybody's trying to come up that front straightaway. And I just don't think that the Lotus Elan had the legs to pull it coming out of that final turn.
We'll have to watch for it and see how it turns out when they get over into the Andretti hairpin.
Meanwhile, number 78, Kevin C., just made a jump. Look at that. He jumped right past both of those Alfa Romeos as they were going up the front straightaway. He's driving a 1966 Porsche
911. And also Gunnar Jeanette made a move on Patrick Byrne in that 1965 Alfa Romeo.
Yeah, Byrne's car is based on a production car, while Jeanette's is a pure race car built by Alfa.
So once again, after that first lap, we've got Patrick Long, the accomplished racer. He's in number 68, but he's being challenged for the lead by Nelson Cali in a 1967 Porsche 911, and he's got it. So now Patrick Long has got to see if he can battle it out going up the hill and get a better line going into the corkscrew.
Boy, Long just dogging it, right in his wheel tracks as they go up the hill, now through turn 6. Has a little tighter line going through that corner. Tries to pull alongside as they go up the Ray Hall straight. Trying to inch across and cuts across the nose as Cali, I think, locked the brakes. No, it was Long that locked the brakes as they went through there, and Cali maintained that position and has the lead as they come down off the corkscrew.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. He was trying to get side by side, but locking up the brakes just hurt him a little bit. Allowed Cali to go ahead and retake the lead, or hang on to the lead is a better way to describe it. So once again, Patrick Long, unfortunately, giving up the lead to Nelson Cali. Nelson Cali doing a great job of defending. But if you look at the tires, Nelson Cali's got, I think, slightly wider tires than the other one. Remember I mentioned that Fiat Abarth, that 18A? That's the one with the engine that's less than 1,000 cc's. Well, looks like all 1,000 cc's are having a problem today.
Yeah, turn workers down there with some extinguisher. There was smoke pouring out of the back of that car. Looked like it got very, very hot. Looked more like steam than oil smoke. In the meantime, those two Porsches appear to be running away from the rest of the field. That battle out front, Nelson Cali 27, Patrick Long 68. A pair of Porsche 911s, a 67 and a 68 911 T/R. Are the class of the field. They are gone and continuing to pull away from the rest of the battle. That Lotus Elan 26R of Tom Tuttle running in the 3rd spot. So he did have the legs up the start-finish straightaway and got around. He's being pursued by Gunnar Jeanette now in that Alfa TZ. That Alfa GTA also starting to work here its way through. Somebody went off. That was Gunnar Jeanette. Gunnar Jeanette off into the dirt. That looks like the entrance to turn 5. He was off on the right, and for some reason he went straight off, saw the dust, and he's going to try and get it pointed in the right direction. Another car goes off backwards. That's 96, Edward Matsuishi in his Porsche 911 as he spun off track too. Didn't hit anything, waiting for a break in traffic where he can get back on if he can get the car fired. Oil flags being displayed in that area, which indicates that's probably what caused these drivers to go off. There was a slippery surface they did not see, and they got into it and went sliding off into the gravel and dirt.
And the number 96 gets back out there, but unfortunately the damage was done to Edward Matsuishi in that 1965 Porsche 911. He slid off, and as a result had to let the entire field go through. And this is number 102, which appears to be sitting off to the side of the road. So, yeah. And here's another look at what happened as we were going in there. We didn't get to see Gunnar Jeanette as he went off, but the good news is it didn't look like he hit anything. And then just a few moments later, you had that Porsche that came off just as Gunnar Jeanette was getting ready to rejoin.
Yeah, that was Brandon Adrian that's parked up on top of the hill in that other Alfa 102.
So on track, Nelson Cali continues to lead. Patrick Long is in 2nd, but as a result of all the shuffling, it looks like the Lotus has somehow dropped back. Not sure what the story with the Lotus is, but it's a situation where that Lotus that was being driven by Tom Tuttle has dropped on our charts completely and may be off the track at this point. So
shown down in 12th spot, I believe.
There we go. He's moved back to 12th. Not sure what the problem was, but now we're back in a situation where we've got 4 Porsches leading this race. Nelson Cali in a 67, Patrick Long in a 68, Alan Turpins in a 67.
Yellow flag all. We are in a safety car situation because of that Alfa that's parked there in the infield on the side. Pace car picks up the leader, Nelson Cali, in car 27. Patrick Long tucks in behind, and now it's Alan Turpins behind him, then Kevin C. So Porsches 1, 2, 3, 4, and Patrick Byrne, as you mentioned, in that Alfa 162, now running in 5th spot. That's an Alfa Romeo GTA.
Brandon Adrian is the car that is stalled on course. That's a 1967 Alfa Romeo Auto Delta GTA 1600. Doesn't look like he hit anything, doesn't look like he hurt anything other than the fact that whatever problem has caused him to stall, he is dead in the water out there. And the result is we got to have safety cars on course, and the result being that we are now full course yellow. So the question is, does this allow Patrick Long to have a run at Nelson Cali when they go green again?
Well, Cali's got to be watching his mirrors as well as the road in front of him when the green flag does wave. He knows that Patrick Long is a formidable competitor, and he's going to do everything he can to get back around him.
As we mentioned earlier, Patrick Long, a factory Porsche driver. This is his second race of the day. Earlier, he was in a Porsche 356 on Speedster. Unfortunately, had some problems, but the two-time Le Mans winner in class is definitely a great driver, knows what he's doing, and has the ability. The question is, does his car have the chops to keep up with him? So that's going to be part of the interesting thing. And once again, as I mentioned, when you look at the tires comparison between the number 27 Cali car together with the number 68 Patrick Long car, it just appears that Cali's tires are a bit wider, perhaps a bit more tread contact on bigger footprint on the track.
Well, Long's got the bigger motor car. He's got a 2.5-liter car, as does Kevin C., who charged from 10th up to 4th in that number 78 car. So keep your eye on Kevin C., because he has moved up, 6 spots, and he may be challenging Alan Turpins for 3rd when we get back to green flag racing.
Yeah, Kevin C. is that 1966. It's the number 78, the blue one that you see going up under the bridge right there. And as you mentioned, he started in 10th and has moved his way up. And I love this one, a 1967 Datsun Roadster 311. They had the Datsun 1600 and the Datsun 2000. These were great little cars. People always think about the Datsun 240Z as a sports car, but before there was a Datsun 240Z, it was the Datsun 1600 and the Datsun 2000 that ruled the roads.
Yeah, they were the first sports cars imported into the U.S. by Datsun. As you say, predecessor to the Z cars, which came later and were very, very popular.
And of course, there's the Datsun 510. Now that is a Nissan Bluebird that looks a lot like the Datsun 510. Nissan Bluebird was a car that was only sold in Japan. It was a Japanese domestic. And you'll notice that is a right-hand drive car, so it was imported as a right-hand drive car and competes over here. But it was essentially the Japanese domestic version of the Datsun 510.
Did you ever drive a right-hand car, Rick?
I've driven them in Europe, and you have. I know when I've been over there and I've driven sticks, it makes me really have to think with a manual transmission what to do. It's a little bit easier if you drive a right-hand drive with an automatic transmission, because I don't have to think about shifting with my right hand.
It doesn't take too long to get used to. It's the same shift pattern. It's just you're sitting on the other side of the car and shifting with your left hand instead of your right. My Morgan was a right-hand drive car. The big advantage to right-hand drive, it's very easy to parallel park. The big disadvantage is trying to pass on a 2-lane road, because you have to get out over the line to see if anybody's coming, or if you have a passenger, you just kind of edge out and just watch the passenger's face, and that'll tell you whether someone's coming your way.
Well, I do own a BMW Isetta, if you know what that car is.
Oh, yeah.
The little one-door car with a one-cylinder motor. That does have the manual shift on the left-hand side. Even more interesting, it's a backwards H pattern. So first is down and to the right. So you really have to think when you're driving that. Looks like the lights on the pace car are out, and we're going to be racing here again. I think we got about another 8.5 minutes or so left in this race. So as we watch Nelson Cali go ahead, and yep, the pace car is off. He's got Patrick Long behind him. Patrick Long's job is to try to keep up with him. Nelson Cali's already on the gas, coming up under the bridge, taking the green flag. The question is, can Patrick Long do anything? Looked like Cali had an inside line and prevented Patrick Long from going to the inside. Patrick Long takes a look in. Now he's moving out. The question is, can he get him on the outside? Not quite enough. He's going to try to move back to the inside, but I don't think Patrick Long can pull it off.
He had a little more power going up the front straight. He was able to close on it, but not quite enough. Remember, he's got a 2.5-liter engine in that car. Also keep your eye on Kevin C. in 78. He's going to be working over Alan Turpin's in that number 40. So those 4 Porsches having a great battle at the head of this pack.
Yeah, the others are white, but the Kevin C one is that blue one. You see it in 4th place. Started 10th, moved his way up. He wasn't able to make a change, but now he's got that Alfa Romeo right behind him. That's the Patrick Byrne car, the 1965 Alfa Romeo GTA that's taking a look to the inside as they go up the hill, because apparently he's got a little more horsepower, but he's not quite completely beside. Kevin C is able to hold on to the position.
Alfa taking a shallower line, trying to get alongside. What he would like to do is be on the inside when they get to the top of the hill to start down through the corkscrew, but just not able to do it. They all come down now through the corkscrew. Alfa started 5th and is now still running 5th. Kevin Say, as we mentioned, started in 10th. And has worked his way up to 4th spot. Here's the battle for the lead coming down into turn 11. Long trying to make a move on Cali. Let's see what happens when they come up to start-finish straightaway this time. If Long can stay close enough to Cali, he can't do it. Cali seems to have more acceleration in the lower gears as he come off the line, and Long drops back about 20 car lengths, closes it up again a little bit on braking, going into the Andretti hairpin, but can't get close enough to make a move. Trying to keep the pressure on Cali, hoping for a miscue, a mistake, an opening that'll let him get by.
Top 8 cars separated by just under 9.5 seconds right now. Patrick Long using all the track. You saw him get off into the dirt just a little bit, picking up some of that dust, but he's working hard to do his best to get up to Nelson Cali in that 1967 Porsche 911 that has the lead.
Yeah, Long closes up on him again as they go through the infield. Going through turn 5 now, their climb up the hill. Long likes to make a move up there. He will try and get inside Cali as they crest the hill and go into the corkscrew. If he's close enough, that's where he will probably attempt to pass.
Boy, going back through the field, check that out. That number 38, that's a 1966 Marcos 1800. Don't see a lot of Marcos running on racing days, but this is a great one to be able to see.
A very pretty body. You look at the side silhouette of that car. Very attractive car.
Yeah, yesterday we saw a Bizzarini out on the track.
A Bizzarini and an Isa Revolta.
Yeah, just ahead of him is number 41. That's John Baer, the 1967 Lotus Elan. So we got a Lotus, we got a Marcos, then we got a whole field of Porsches. A lot of Porsches in this race, but a lot of also great variety. And there's a 356 in addition to the 911s. And of course, the 356 was the predecessor to the 911. For just 1 year, that both cars were produced at the same time. The 356 gave way to the 911. Incidentally, the original name of the 911 was the 901. They didn't call it the 911, but Peugeot said, no, we have the rights to the 0 in the middle. You're confusing people. So Porsche said, great, well, we'll just put another 1 in there. And I think it worked out fine. The 911 becomes an iconic name in automotive history.
There's some Morgans out there too. These are not the E production Morgans. These are 4.4s. Run that English Ford engine, the same engine you've got at the front of the Ford, a 1600cc motor. The little lower chassis, less power, ran about 2 classes below the regular Morgan, which was an E production car running that Triumph TR3 2-liter engine.
Less than 5 minutes to go in this race as we're watching them go around, and there we see that is the fifth place car of Kevin C. It looks like the Alfa Romeo has gotten past him now, and there Gunnar Jeanette is trying to work his way back up. He's in that number 53 car. He was all the way back in 10th place as a result of the spin that he had. We believe it was a result of oil that was on the track because 2 cars spun at about the same time. And now he's been working his way back up in an Alfa Romeo GTZ from 1964.
Boy, the gap between Cali and Long last time they crossed the start-finish line, 0.2 of a second. So still a fierce battle at the front. And they've pulled out over Alan Turpins, who is running third in the number 40 car. They've got about a 4-second gap over him.
For Gunnar Jeanette, well, he's got that car right behind him, that Lotus right behind him, but his next thing that he wants to battle is that 1967 Nissan Bluebird, and this is Kevin C. He's under attack from a 1967 Datsun Roadster being driven by John Wilkins.
Let's see, he's got the acceleration coming out of turn 11, the horsepower up the front straightaway.
And it just doesn't have enough going up that front straightaway to do anything as they go into the Andretti hairpin.
New race leader, according to our timing monitor. We didn't see it, but Patrick Long is back out front in the 68 car.
So he was able to make a move on Nelson Cali, and now he has the lead, and it's about a second and a third lead. So he's still doing well, and Alan Turpins in a 1967 Porsche 911 is in third place. Meanwhile, this is the battle for 7th, 8th, 9th. There you see the number 77. That's the 7th place car, that 1969 Porsche, being followed by that Nissan Bluebird, essentially a Datsun 510, and Gunnar Jeanette right behind him, followed by Tom Tuttle in the Lotus Elan. So they are running nose to tail as they go up the hill, trying to get an advantage, trying to figure out who can shake this thing out. The Datsun trying to take a look to the inside the number 78 Porsche, but can't quite pull it off. And I think that the number 78 Porsche has had a little bit of a problem and is kind of fallen back, because for a while he was challenging up front.
Well, we've got to be in the closing stages of this one, maybe 2 more laps to go. We'll have to catch the signal from the starter when they get down to start finish. And that Datsun Roadster right alongside Kevin C makes the pass and takes the position, moves himself up into 5th spot. That's Wilkins in that Datsun Roadster 1967 model car 79.
Yeah, very impressive. He's done a great job of moving his way up, because he started back in 9th place and has now moved himself into the top 5. So we're going to come across the finish line. We only have about a minute and a half or so left in this race, so I'm going to guess they're going to be showing him 1 lap to go, and that's exactly what we can see. 1 lap to go. Now we got to catch up to Patrick Long, who has built up a decent lead over the number 27 car. That's the number 27 car being driven by Nelson Cali, a 1967 Porsche 911, and Patrick Long in the number 68, a 1968 Porsche 911T Racing. That is just up ahead. So he somehow was able to take the lead, and now he's built up a very strong lead, probably about 2.5 seconds or so.
Alan Turpin's still running in the 3rd spot, but he's another 10 seconds behind Cali. And looking at the gap there, Byrne in that Alfa GTA solidly in 4th spot, and that's probably where he's going to stay. He has a chance to challenge Alan Turpins for a 3rd spot on this final lap. He's about a second back, but then pretty much everybody's going to stay in order. But 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, all very tightly bunched. Could see some position changes on this final lap as Long heads out of turn 10, heading down into turn 11, the left-hander that'll put him on the front straightaway and head to the checkered flag.
So Patrick Long, from the frustration of that earlier race when he was in a 356 Speedster, had a mechanical problem and had to drop out. This time, he starts the race on the pole, eventually gets past, but takes the lead back, and he will take the checkered flag here at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca to win the Group 4B. And this is that battle we were talking about. This is for 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, right there. We've got Kevin C in the number 78 car. The number 53 car is being driven by Gunnar Jeanette. That Datsun, number 79. The question is, what kind of drag race is it going to be coming up to that front straightaway? The number 78 car, absolutely, but the number 53 Gunnar Jeanette car comes across, gets ahead of that Datsun. Where did the Lotus Elan do? I think the Lotus Elan may have moved ahead as well. It was really tight. Yep, Tom Tuttle in that 1964 Lotus Elan was able to take 7th place, just barely away from John Wilkins in the 1967 Datsun Roadster.
And Kevin C had repassed that Datsun Roadster to take 5th spot. Then Jeanette and Tuttle and Wilkins, Smalley, McDowell complete the top 10. That was a great battle in that last group from 6th through 10th. They crossed the start-finish line. Long had not an easy day, but at least a comfortable one.
I think you had to work at it, absolutely. Once again, let's take a look at the highlights of this race. Patrick Long, from the word go, well, he was the leader on the first lap, But it wasn't something he held on to easily, and there was great battling all the way through. The Alfas, the Lotus, the Porsches, all trying to go at it. And there you see the number 48 getting pushed off into the dirt right there. And Gunnar Jeanette in that Alfa GTZ had to hang on the inside. Then this was where Nelson Cali took the lead away from Patrick Long as they were coming up the backside. And then more battling inside, and this is where Gunnar Jeanette spun the GTZ, and we believe there may have been oil on the track. That dropped him, and he had to work his way back. And then Patrick Long had to work to come back to try to get the lead back from Nelson Cali. But he was able to pull it off, and he wins the race. Patrick Long winning the Group 4B 1968 Porsche 911, taking across the green flag to win the race. Congratulations to Patrick Long. And Nelson Cali did a great job. He may have lost the race, but at least he can say I was beaten by a two-time Le Mans champion.